everyone, and welcome to Bass Pro Shop's Outdoor World here in Springfield, Missouri to start season 14 of the Bass Pros. We've got a great lineup of shows, some new faces. Let's get it started. On today's show, Edwin Evers, one of the best in South Texas. Well, he's going to show us how to catch the big ones in early spring. Then, whatever happened to the shaky head? I mean, it probably catches more bass than anything we throw. That's today's In the Zone. But first, get ready for this, gang. We're going to go with Kevin VanDam, and he finds the mother lode of giant smallies way up north.
You know, swim baits are just such a great choice when you have real clear water because they look so natural to the bass. Got him. Big one. Gosh, he just loaded on. I love that. That is a great big one. That's what you look for. I mean, in this clear water, swim baits are just one of the best baits that you can use because they're so natural. So anytime I've got clear water, I know that a swim bait's gonna be a player. Look at the size of that one. Wow. Cast it out there, just slow swim it along. It's just super natural in this clear water. These big fish can't stand it. In this clear water in Michigan, you know, these small swim baits, they're dynamite because they just match the forage that these fish are used to feeding on. I was just taking this little swimmer and basically throwing it down a lot of these edges, some of these transition lines where it goes from rock to gravel, rock to sand, or weed edges, anything like that. Any transitional edge, you throw that Braided swimmer down it, if there's smallmouth there, they're gonna come and bite it. You just slow reel that along. Give them something that they're used to looking at that's a lot more natural than you know, a spinnerbait or a crankbait. You know, when I'm using these small swim baits, I like to throw it on spinning gear. You know, I've got a 7'4" spinning rod, 8-pound test Bass Pro XPS fluorocarbon, you know, a big reel, 40 series, you know, spinning reel. I can make a really long cast with it. You just retrieve that nice and slow, steady along, and they'll just come up and click it. Got him. Big one. Spot lock patrolling motor. Stay off the spot. Wow, another big one. I'm just following these transitions with it, but you know, for me, it's just about you know, that slow presentation. That's a real pretty one right there. Look at that, black spot, and he's got it all the way down. You know, the swim bait that was the best for me today was the 325, you know, Straight King Braided swimmer. I used it on a 1/4 ounce head in KVD Magic. You know, this is a color that I designed just for these, you know, Michigan smallmouth lakes where there's so many perch and smelt and things like that that they feed on every day. It looks so natural. You know, it's really important to have them swimming straight. I'm gonna rig another one up. I've got it just on a 1/4 ounce little Straight King swim bait head. And just thread that on there, make sure it's super straight. And this size right here is really good, but I mean, they make 4 sizes. You know, whatever size bait fish you're trying to imitate, that's what size swim bait you wanna throw. So I'll rig it with whatever size head that I need for the depth of the water. Right now I'm fishing, you know, 7 to 12 foot of water. That 1/4 ounce on 8-pound Bass Pro XPS fluorocarbon, just on that spinning rod's just perfect. It swims right along, right down in the water column. Got him, big one. It just has such a great look to it that it'll still get them to commit to it. And you're a real high percentage strike to land ratio with it. You know, when they come up there and eat it, usually you catch every single one of them. Big one. Nothing like the way they eat that swim bait. When these little swimmers are in the right zone and the bass are there, it can turn a normally tough day into a feeding frenzy. My favorite thing in the whole world is catching these big smallmouth like this. I've been, you know, coming to northern Michigan for my whole life. My dad took me to catch my first smallmouth when I was 7 years old. And man, look at the size of that one right there. I've been hooked on them ever since.
You know, Edwin Evers has won millions of dollars fishing a crankbait, and he's going to show us why he utilizes it during the spring.
Oh, it's a good one. Oh yeah. Can't even see that crankbait down his mouth. Oh, look at that. Where's my bait? Man, that is such a prime example right there of making multiple casts. I felt that fish hit it on my first cast in there. And I think it was 4, 5, 6 casts later, he finally came back and ate it again. Look at that. You like it when they eat it that way. That thing is down in there. Come here, buddy. I'll put you right back in the water. There we go. It's a nice fish. Awesome. So, you know what we got here, we're down here in South Texas, and what I'm hoping is that I can maybe explain how I follow these drains. It's such a flat reservoir, when you get back in this timber, you just can't map it. It's just, so flat, but yet those fish are gonna relate to those deeper areas. So we hope to figure out those deeper areas and hopefully we can dial it in and get some fish caught in those. When I pull in here, I notice that we got bigger trees in the middle, smaller, spindlier trees on the sides. It's protected from a north wind. It's got a little bit deeper water than, say, some of the other drains. And it's got deep water close. I think that's something else that's kind of important, especially on lakes like this that fluctuate a lot. When they start pulling the water down and start, irrigating out of this lake, it's gonna fall and fall hard, so they need to have deep water close by. One thing that I always want to focus on, I always am looking for, is outside bends. And here's a prime example. You can see I've got big hardwoods and they start to make a bend right here. Those fish are going to stage up in these outside bends before they go up on this flat and spawn. So you can see the little trees behind it, so I know that's shallow. So the reason the bigger trees give the creek location away is that's obviously where the moisture is. The more water you have, down here in these arid situations, the more a tree is going to grow, and they're going to grow in the deepest point. And this should be a key little stretch right here with it being an outside bend. There he is. Not very big. Oh, that's a nice one. Again, multiple. Oh, that's a better fish than I thought it was. He's got a mouthful of that crankbait too. You believe that's fun. Oh man, when I first hooked him, I thought, it's not a very big one. My crankbait's starting to come out. Come here, buddy. Just a regular old, got a little bit more of a belly. Well, I'm learning something as our day is going on here. Make multiple casts. That's another fish where it took me 2, 3 casts to get him to bite. I felt him bite on the first one, and then he ate it, and I got him in the boat. I've chose the square bill, for this. What I'm doing is 2 reasons. The square bill is going to help deflect it off the cover, but the depth it runs important too. A square bill doesn't get very deep. I want to keep this bait up high. These fish are suspended. I'm out here in 8, 10 foot of water. I'm not trying to get to the bottom. These fish are going to be suspended. I think in the springtime, they're always trying to come up for warmth. The water on the top is always warmer than the water on the bottom. A lot of times, mistakes that, that I've made in the past, and I think, a lot of people, especially starting out fishing, they throw this crankbait out there and they wind it in. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I am all the time, I'm pulling it, I'm dragging it, I'm pausing it, I'm changing my speeds And you know, for those people out there that are, you know, been fishing some, really try to make that bait do something different on every cast. Just make life into it. Don't just give it an old straight retrieve the whole way in. You're gonna catch some fish that way, you know, maybe after you bump something, but I'm all the time stopping it, starting it, bumping it, pulling it, you know, doing whatever I can to make that bait just a little bit different. It can really help you get more bites and trigger more bites. Get up here. Get up here. I got you now. Long fish. Nice one. That is fun. That's a lot of fun. You know, I can't tell you how many times today that I've had a fish, and it's going to be really hard for people to understand. I'm going to let this fish go and I'm going to tell you about this. You know, you'll feel something different with that crankbait when you're reeling it in. And I don't actually think those fish hit it, but if you could picture a fish going up to your crankbait and then turning, and it just flushes water towards it, so your crankbait almost like somebody cut your line or the bills broke, so it's got a little second there, a millisecond that it's mushy, that there's nothing there. And that's the third time I felt that today. Made another cast, and boom, I got that fish. So, you know, when you're reeling that bait in, really pay attention, especially this time of year, you know, pre-spawn and when people are really out here fishing lots of pressure. If you feel something weird with that crankbait, make the exact same cast again.
You know, Edwin Evers is a master with a crankbait. If there's two things to always remember, make sure a crankbait hits something. You want it to deflect. And number two, make sure to always power wind. Sometimes when you're cranking, speed does kill.
You know, if you're to ask me, hey, what kind of trees are you looking for? This tree right here would be at the very top of my list. You know, first, we've got the creek. It comes in, and then it makes a bend right here, and it goes right back here. It's good depth water. It's, you know, it's right at the depth we've been catching our fish at. Two, it's the biggest tree around. You know, the bigger the tree, a lot of times the bigger the fish, or the more opportunity you have to catch a fish off of it because of the shade factor and the comfort factor as a home for a bass. And three, this thing's got some horizontal branches on it, big branches that has, you know, provides shade, and I can make good casts, bring them right over those branches. This to me would be a tree that I'd hit, you know, multiple times in a day if I was tournament fishing. You know, in a lake like this, now we're talking about flatland reservoirs, everything's flat, you know, meaning it doesn't have big steep bluffs, any of that stuff. These fish travel in and out of these drains. They're not even creeks, you know, it's just a depression, but at the center of the depression, we've got these trees. You know, I think they may winter out there in that river, or, you know, last fall they're out in that river, and as they move up wanting to spawn, they come up the center of these drains, and they get right up here, and then they hold. It's kind of like a holding pattern at an airport. They're gonna wait till the weather, everything is good, and then they pull out of this drain and they'll go right up on these flats, these 2, 3, 4 foot flats, and they'll spawn. So it's a great area right through here. You know, these fish will just kind of move back and forth when everything gets perfect. Water temperature, water level, the moon, you know, right now we're between two moons, so they're not up there. If the full moon was here, we'd be up there fishing on the bank, you know, and then you get a cold front, pulls those fish right back out here to this deeper water, to these drains. And these are where those fish are gonna stage. They'll be right here when they get done spawning, and then they'll move back out to the river. You know, a lot of times, you know, when you're fishing out in the middle, I mean, we're right out in the middle right now, you're gonna find a tree that all the fish that come in to spawn, they're gonna come by that tree. And that's why I always fish all of them. I don't care if it, you know, even if it just, I caught that fish off that little twig, there might be a bunch underneath it, and I'm not saying that's a magical tree, but it's always a good point to try to fish every tree you can, you know, from the start all the way to the back, because there's always going to be a key little stretch that might be good. Not a giant, but good, nice fish. So you're a guy that's gonna come down here, let's say from up north or a highland type reservoir, and you wonder, where do you start on these flat lakes? You know, what I really want you to think about or focus on is, you know, picture this with no water. It's gonna have deeper water in it, just like you would in a highland reservoir. It's just not gonna be big vertical drops. So as that creek's coming back in here, you're gonna, one, pay attention to the timber. The bigger timber, the hardwoods. Two, you're gonna pay attention to where the center of that drain comes closer to the bank. Those are gonna be your key areas. And then your depth, because there's always gonna be a depth that's gonna outshine the rest, you know, for the time of year that you're here. So, you know, once you figure out the depth, stay in the center of those drains, you're gonna be able to figure out where those fish are pretty quick. That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh yeah. Yeah, buddy. Yeah. Look at that one. Oh, that is so much fun. Oh, my bait just come out. Yeah, buddy. You know, we didn't go very far. That last fish came off that tree. We went just a few feet and we got this big old girl. That's what this fish is doing. This fish is just sitting right here. You know, it's wanting to go up. You know, it's gonna sit right here until that full moon comes. She's gonna go up and go up there and spawn. Oh, there we go. Look at that one. That is fun, fun, fun. Big old fish. Nice. Nice, nice. Thank you, thank you.
When I'm getting ready for a Bass Pro Tour event, I'm doing a lot of tackle prep, and changing line is a big thing. So I want to be as efficient as possible. Just like here, I'm changing 3 spinnerbait rods. What I'll do is I'll pull all my rods at one time. I may have sometimes 15 or 20 of them out there if I'm changing that many. I just tighten the spool tension on the reel a little bit. I'm only going to pull out till I get to a knot. I don't fill the whole reel. I only fill the top half. You're never going to use that line down there in the bottom, and you're just wasting money if you're filling the whole spool. So I'm going to pull it out till I get to that knot. Then I'm going to cut it off, tie a double square knot. Reel like this, just real simple. I'm never going to get down to this when I'm fishing anyways. Clip that off. And then I refill with bulk spools. You know, I buy these from Bass Pro, and you know, this right here, having 1,000 yards or whatever, I'm only going to put 75 on there. I'm only using that. So this way I'm not buying small filler spools and wasting money and wasting some line that I'm not going to use. I've got a continuous spool. It costs a little more up front, but it saves you a lot of money in the long run, and I'm a lot more efficient at night when I'm changing these.
You know, this little dude right here, the shaky head worm, it's hardly a secret, but it's knowing where and how to fish it to get more bites. It's today's In the Zone. Nice one, nice one, nice one. As perfect of a shaky head bass as you could get. Nice 15.5 incher. Perfect. What is one of the lures that has stood the test of time and catches them all year long? January to December, definitely the little shaky head worm. This right here is a 3/16 ounce ball head with a Strike King Fat Baby finesse worm. And really, the main thing that I look for is a hard bottom. A shaky head just catches them. One of the biggest things in shaky head fishing is when you throw that out, just throw a little bit of slack into your line to let that bait go straight down. Basically, you're tightening up your line to where you're in contact with that worm and pulsing it. There he is. There he is. And just don't horse him. You hear how I'm letting that drag do the work for me? Wow, he's full of fire now. Good one. Nice fish. throw this dude on braided line to a fluorocarbon leader. I can get a nice long cast, but number two, I can feel everything. When I set the hook on him, all I did was reel set him. Hi there, you cute. That is a perfect shaky head bass right there. That is a nasty little mouse trap. In just a few minutes, the doors are about to open here at Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World, where your adventure starts and our little TV show, The Bass Pros, does too. Let's get after it. On today's show, David Walker, well, he's going to show us a great 1-2 punch for wintertime bass on highland reservoirs. Then, when bass are incredibly finicky, a little split shot rig, it could save your day, and it's today's In the Zone. But first, Ot Defo, well, he's going to show us a flip and skip technique for springtime bass using the exact same worm.
It's a nice isolated bush out here on that point. Yep, there he is.
I thought I felt a bite. When these bass finish up spawning, they're going to go to whatever decent cover is available, and they're going to try to use that cover to ambush whatever food source is available. Come here, buddy. They're going to find some food and find some cover when they get to the post spawn. Man, that straight tail worm is so good in the post spawn. Just not intrusive. Those bass, just like this one, they're kind of skinny, but they're feeding back up. It's a big, bulky bait, just not an intrusive one. Man, they can't help but bite it. What we've got going on here, we've got some pretty bright skies, not much wind, a little ripple here and there, but I've really got a couple things that's working, and I'm going to start with the Magnum Finesse worm. And that, most of my bites are coming down deep in these buck bushes. The second one is the wacky rig, and it's something I can skip around those docks, dead sticking it, letting it do its thing. That wacky rig setup, to be able to skip it that good, I really like to fish on spinning tackle. For me, that's going to be a Johnny Morris Platinum 7-1 medium action rod, a Johnny Morris Platinum reel, Bass Pro Hyper Braid, and an 8 or 10 pound XPS fluorocarbon leader on the end of that. For the actual bait, I use a number 1 or number 2 VMC weedless Nico hook and a Bass Pro wacky sticko worm. I'm going to cast in there, let it sink to the bottom or nearly to the bottom before I do anything. And then it's just about gently shaking that bait to be able to watch those ends just quiver back and forth underwater. That's all you're wanting it to do. There's one on that wacky worm right off the dock. Dang, that's a smallmouth. Man, that's crazy. Was not expecting to catch a smallmouth right there. Come here, buddy. Man, that's pretty cool. It's a nice chunky fish too. All right, thanks for that. There you go, buddy. See ya. The 3 or 4 bites I've had so far today have really kind of told me one thing. They've been on different types of cover, but they've all been in a similar depth. They've all been 2 to 4 feet deep is where every bite I've had has came from. So whatever kind of good cover it is, I just need to fish it as long as it's up in that 2 to 4 foot depth range. When you're fishing that worm down deep in those bushes, you really got to make sure to have the right rod and reel set up as well. The rod and reel I'm fishing it on is a 7-1 medium heavy Johnny Morris Platinum rod. A Johnny Morris Platinum reel, 8:3 to 1 gear ratio, very high speed. Then I like to use 50 pound braid and a 17 or 20 pound XPS fluorocarbon leader. I'm fishing that on a 1/4 ounce tungsten sinker, 3/0 heavy duty worm hook. And again, that's the Bass Pro Magnum Finesse worm. Green pumpkin is the color that I'm using. Smallmouth out of a bush. That's not something you do every day. Boy, that is a good one. Look at that. Man, that fish is strong. That's crazy. You don't really catch all that many smallmouth flipping, but man, it sure is fun when you do. That straight tail worm, this time of year, man, it just works so well for catching these fish as they're moving back out in those bushes. A lot of people, they'll tell you, you know, one of their more dreaded times of the year can be post-spawn, but really if you understand what's going on, that those fish are, you know, that they're recovering, but they are feeding. This is the time of year where they want to feed back up and really kind of recuperate from the spawn. So if you understand what's going on and what those fish are, where they're living and where they're keying in and what they're feeding on, it can be one of the most productive times of the year. He's still on there. He's still on there. I've had a bunch of them stuck, but that's another smallmouth and I got him out. Man, I can't believe I got him out of there. I've lost so many like that, and you do so often. But golly, that fish is strong. Come here, baby. I can't believe it's a smallmouth. Right in that bush too. Man, that's so cool. They get you hung up down in those bushes. As long as you keep pressure, you keep pulling them out, sometimes you'll get them out of there. That's what you got to do. You got to get right in the meat of those bushes where those fish will bite. Be able to have a chance at a fish like that. To catch not only one, but two smallmouth actually flipping out of bushes today is something I won't forget for a long time.
You know, wintertime bass are just hard to catch. A newcomer to the Bass Pros TV show, David Walker, has a 1-2 punch to take them down.
Hey, you want to catch more bass in the springtime? Check out this right here, the 1-2 punch. That late winter, like you start getting a few warm days, to me that's that early pre-spawn time. And to me that is by far my favorite time to fish. Because those fish are starting to move away from winter, thinking about that springtime. So for me, the 1-2 punch, I'm using a crankbait to cover a lot of water, and my second one is my jig to really pick apart those pieces of cover that I can find. The water's so low, there's not a lot of targets. And so typically, you can find you one good log, and this one right here is basically laying on the edge of where that little creek comes out here. And a jig is a great way to fish a spot like this, because a jig's going to allow you to get right down in the heart of that, because you can see that that's basically the top end of a big tree that's broke off. Uh-huh. Come here, you. Jig getter. Now we're talking. Man, oh man. Really for me, when I go out there on a day like this, I got a couple ideas that I'm going to use, and for the most part it's going to be a crankbait and a jig. Those baits don't have a lot in common, for sure, but they do work great together. I mean, it's like peas and carrots. When you say crankbait and you say jig, there's a lot of variables that can be like what style of crankbait, how big it is, or how, but for the most part, I'm going to stay in a crankbait that I'm going to use in like 6 foot or less. So I've used my crankbait to search, kind of go down the banks, and as you can see, the water's really low, so we don't have a lot of targets to throw at with the jig. But when I come to one, that's when I pick that jig up and really pick that piece of cover apart. Another nice one. Look at this one right here. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, look at that fish right there. Another example of one good target to throw at, and that's where that fish was. He got that cross-eyed jig. In this clear water, these fish are getting a real good look at that bait, so love it, love it. Today we've got a situation where the water's been pulled down and it's cleared up a lot. So I went with a real natural color and I downsized the size of this right here. This is a jig that I designed. It's called a cross-eyed jig from Z-Man. Now this is the Z-Man Bat Wings trailer. It's made out of elastic, but I downsized. Now it's still a 1/2 ounce jig, so I like that. I like the heavier jig because I get a good rate of fall. It falls a little quicker, but also that weight allows me to get into that place like where that fish was right there. He was really buried up and where those roots were, where that tree had slid off into the bank. And that heavier jig allowed me to get right down into where that fish was. I'm using a
GLX G-Loomis flipping stick. It's 7.5 foot, and I got it paired with a high-speed Shimano reel, the Metanium reel. This reel is really lightweight, 8.5 to 1 gear ratio, so when I set the hook, I can get a hold of that fish right away. I got to drop my rod tip again. I can gather up a lot of line quickly and catch up to that fish. So the jig and the trailer, the color, this is a whole system right here that I use to catch fish, especially this time of year. So I was talking about like it's a 1-2 punch. I need to keep moving. I need to keep finding that next easy fish to catch instead of sitting on one spot and trying to make those fish bite. This crankbait allows me to cover a lot of water. This little crankbait is not going to reach the bottom of this bluff. So what I'm doing is I'm getting right near it, right up against it. And as you can see, I'm also holding my rod tip over there, really to guide the bait parallel with that bluff, because now I get on a flatter bank, I'll swing out wider from it. But like here, I want to get right against that. That's an ideal spot right there. You got it. Right where you're supposed to be. Right on that point. See, it threw right past it. Reeled it right up into that rock. And he got it. So as you can see, he got it just like he wanted to. It changed that color up because for the water, it's gotten real clear. So I went with a lot more neutral color to it. And he was convinced. One of their favorite foods for sure is a crawfish, no matter where we go. And I think that's what's cool about this bait is it's got a lot of realistic details to it, you know, and it's not just a paint job. This is a texture to it. Like you can feel all those ridges and the shape of the crawfish itself. So, you know, it adds some realism to it. And anytime you can add more to your lure like that, maybe get you one more bite, maybe not a lot more, but if it's, and all those little details add up and makes for a great.
You know, if there is one thing to remember about wintertime fishing, it's windows. The fish feed in very small windows, and really, in the wintertime, it's usually really, really early and very late. Always remember that window.
This time of year, your temperature gauge is as important as anything on that fish finder. And we started off, it was cold. It was low 50s, 50 degrees. So as I move further up the lake and back into those big creek arms, I know that part of the lake warms up the fastest. So I was looking at that temperature gauge and I'm trying to judge where are those fish going, where have they been, and try to intersect those 2 points. And by just keep moving and covering water with that crankbait, it allowed me to finally kind of dial into where I thought those fish were holding up at. There he is right there. God, he choked it. Can't even see it. Fish was convinced on that shiner right there. Perfect. Convinced. I mean, he wanted that bait. When I first seen him swim out there with it, first set the hook into him, I couldn't even see my lure. All right, right there. Nice big fish. In this spot here, it's basically just a big wide flat, but there are some objects in here that fish are going to relate to, and they're not really objects per se, but these little channels, these little ditches that are on these flats. Now coming into here, you know, it's really just, you're casting at random, and a bait like this is perfect for that because we are fishing so shallow that this bait right here, you can just cast a long ways, literally over into inches of water. But I keep reeling it around, and what'll happen is you'll feel it come across those little open spots. And when it loses contact with the bottom, I know that's where that ditch is. So mentally, I'm mapping the area where I feel like I went through that ditch. You know, you go through it, you turn around and come back. A lot of times that second or third pass to the area, you have a lot better idea where you need to be cast. In a situation like this wide open where you're trying to cover a lot of water, this lipless bait right here, this golden shiner, I mean, it just does the job. So finally we got some sunshine, and this time of year that sun can be critical because it's going to warm those places up, especially those real flat, thin areas. Those are the first ones to cool off, but those are also the first ones to warm up. So that sunshine was key. I knew exactly where we're going to have to go. We're going to find the dirtiest, shallow water that we can find, because I know those fish have been through a cold winter just like we have, and they're looking for that warm water. What's key is this time of year that the really shallow water is the water that warms up first. Right now what we've got in our favor is this warm sunshine, and it's shining on this stained water, and this water is going to warm up way faster, and those fish know it and move right back into these little pockets. You know, that's one thing you always got to keep in mind, is that those fish this time of year especially are moving a lot. Where they were even at the beginning of the day may change where they're at the end of the day. So always be conscious of that, and don't be afraid to move a spot. If you caught them there in the morning, doesn't mean they just quit biting. They may have very well moved entirely on you. That was gonna happen right there, just by them birds. There you go. So, as you can see, got that one hooked just the way you want to. Nice fish. The sun's come out, and as you can see, the fish are wanting to warm up just like we are, and they're getting up in that really skinny water, and that's where that 1-2 punch we were talking about. If the cover doesn't allow this bait to come through there, then I use that jig to go in there after it. But so we've been fishing literally from about 10 foot to 0 foot, and it seems like as the day changes, so does where you're going to catch the fish. Earlier on they start off deeper, and as that sun gets up, they start moving up into that shallower water. You know, I can honestly say I've been making a living fishing now for 19 years. It's my 19th season of fishing for a living. And over that time, there's been so many brand new lures and trends that have come and gone. But honestly, crankbaits and jigs have been something that was popular when I started, and they're still popular today because they are effective. Growing up, learning how to fish in these reservoirs, that early pre-spawn time has really helped me in order to keep catching fish no matter if I know the area or not. Keeping those two baits on the deck really gives me that 1-2 punch.
Serious tournament anglers know that you have to maximize the technology at your fingertips, and a lot of anglers are intimidated by that. You know, if you'd have told me 20 years ago that I'd have all this at my fingertips, 360 imaging, an Ultrex trolling motor that has spot lock that can follow contour lines on my map, to have 2 units up here on the front, a hydrowave that makes fish sounds, and also talons to help control the boat, I'd have told you you're crazy. But it all makes a big difference in how successful I'm going to be on the water. And it's your job to maximize this technology to its fullest. The way to do that is get as much resources as you can. Today, you can go to the manufacturer's websites and see YouTube videos, to see screenshots, to learn how to set your unit up for the situation that you're in, to maximize all this technology. You know, you can use your smartphone for mapping, for Google Earth. There's so many things that you have to be adept at, and it all makes a difference in how successful you're going to be on the water. So don't be intimidated. Do the research, put in the work, and maximize the technology you have at your fingertips.
Hey, remember this guy right here when we were kids? A split shot with a night crawler? Absolutely still powerful with your soft plastics, and it's today's In the Zone. That's one of the things about a split shot. If you look at that rig, it is absolutely, positively nothing fancy. It's literally a little shot of lead and just a Strike King Super Fry. One rig that kind of has been forgotten, thrown by the wayside, not talked about anymore, the simple split shot rig. We've just fished through this area and saw a bunch of fish cruising. We couldn't catch them on other stuff. I said, I wonder if they'll bite the old split shot. And that is like the most simple setup, and that's exactly how I started fishing right there. We were around a lot of other boats, a lot of pressure. The fish were seeing those rigs that we all throw. A split shot rig is a deadly, deadly technique when fish are up shallow. I grew up fishing a split shot worm everywhere I fish. A split shot is so subtle, they almost can't help themselves to bite it. It's like how we grew up fishing. It's a piece of lead with a hook and a worm. I was using a BB size split shot, a 3/0 Trocar Pro V worm hook, and a Strike King Super Fry. And here's the most amazing thing. It is so easy to fish. It's just like fishing a night crawler when we were kids. Throw it out and let it do its own action. Easy, cowboy, easy. Easy, Mustang. If you just fun fish or you fish tournaments and you want to catch just a 5 bass limit, where you got to put 5 in the live well, that rig right there is as killer as it gets. Woo. Hello everyone and welcome to Bass Pro Shop's Outdoor World, where you can find everything you need for everything outdoors. You need to check it out for yourself. Big show today. Brandon Polinick, he's going to show us how he goes high and low for giant bass in gin clear water. Then I'm going to show you why a bladed jig is not only an incredibly powerful tool, but a very versatile tool on In the Zone. But first, Kevin VanDam throwing a wacky worm. Does he really do that? Oh, he does, and he's going to show us all of his secrets.
There's a good one. A little bit better. You know, with conditions the way they are today right now, it's the spring of the year. We've got high bright skies, and water temperatures are coming up where these fish are wanting to come up and think about spawning. It's hard to catch them on a moving bait. This is the perfect time for something that sinks real slow. So I'm just throwing a wacky ocho and a finesse worm, just kind of mixing it up right now, just trying to see what stage these fish are in. They should be moving into these pockets, and they just won't chase much. So something that sinks real slow in front of them that has a lot of action, really, really deadly. Just like that little bush right there on that point. It's just the perfect spot. It's a slow way to fish, but once you get in an area where they're at, it's a great way to get a lot of bites in a hurry. Got him. Good one too. Just like that. Nice one. I twitched it one time and I watched my line just go. It's just deadly for these type of conditions. I've learned my lesson the hard way. When you've got no wind and conditions like this, you gotta really go to ultra finesse. There's one cruising right there. Oh, there's one about to bite it. He just did. Got him. I saw him, that one just come over there and eat it. That's a nice spot. I was just watching, and again, when it's like this, okay, threw my worm off. When it's like this, being real still is important, and having good polarized sunglasses too, where you can see in the water to see not only the fish, but to see the objects that they're going to be around. A wacky rig soft plastic bait is just hard to beat. I started with 2 different soft plastics, a 6.5 inch Strike King KBD Perfect Plastics finesse worm and 5-inch ocho. Very much good bluegill imitators. The fish are thinking about chasing bluegill, protecting their nest, even though they're not even starting yet. When I'm just blind casting, trying to cover a little bit more water, that ocho is the way to go. It'll get down deeper, quicker, and it's just a little bit more efficient. Once I know, where the fish are really targeted, or if I've really got, that perfect spot, There's nothing like that super slow sink of that finesse worm like that. Most guys now like to use, you know, this braided line like this. You know, I've got 10-pound Bass Pro braid. This yellow braid is really nice. I can watch that line. I can see, you know, if one bites it on the sink. And, you know, I've got a fluorocarbon leader so that, you know, the fish aren't going to see it. There we go, good one too. Nice one. Thought he was bigger when I first set the hook on him, but that's still a nice one. The beauty of this technique too is that, I mean, the fish have nothing in their mouth but that hook. So it's really hard for them to throw it. You know, that worm will slide up the line, and that Titan X hook it's real small diameter and it's super, super sharp with that titanium coating. You know, it's a slow technique. You have to really slow down, be real patient, and that's hard for me to do. But under conditions like this, I know it's going to be the best scenario. You know, this type of fishing is very visual, and you know, I'm really not sight fishing, so I try to like get, you know, right down the bank like this and make a long cast. You want a blind cast to these fish. If you see them or you get too close to them, they're not going to bite it. But if they don't know anything's around and, you know, that ocho or that wacky worm comes floating down right in front of them, they can't help it. It's so important just to let it sink with the dead slack line. Watch your line. Watch your line. Yep, there he is. Nice one. Looked over there and saw that nice ledge rock there, and just pitched that ocho there. Just let it sink, and I never even saw the line move. A lot of times you can. You know, I just picked up and it was heavy. As much as I love to power fish, I know when I got conditions like this that I better have one of these tied on.
Well, Brandon Polinick is one of the best on clear water smallmouth, but when they get offshore, they get a little bit tricky. He's going to show us how to catch them from top to bottom.
Today we're giving you the 1-2 punch of topwater and drop shot to learn how to catch these clear water northern smallmouth. Anytime that I get in a clear water situation, I'm always using as many senses as I can, right? I'm listening to my topwater, but at the same time, I'm looking, I'm scanning all of the water around me, because a lot of times you may just see a fish that is not in that line of your cast, and you're able to reel in super quick, and you're able to pitch with a drop shot to those fish. And odds are, these smallmouth in clear water, they're probably gonna swim over and eat it. My head's always on a swivel, looking around, and every once in a while you'll see them follow. You know, they'll either follow your bait or you'll just see one kind of out off the edge that's cruising. You want to have a bait ready to go to pitch on them, because there's better ways to catch them than a topwater when you see them like that. So I just keep my head on a swivel. Actually, look, there's one right there, right there. What I do is I always keep a drop shot at the ready, and what I like to do is I pitch out in front of them. So this one's swimming back toward the back of the boat. I call it smallmouth hunting. I pitch back to them, and I let the fish go to the bait. He saw it. He's looking at it. He's looking at it. He's looking at it. Got him. That is smallmouth hunting. I always like to keep that drop shot handy for these fish that are just cruising and roaming. He's got me in that grass. You see him, and what I did is I just kept going, and I spun back around. I was able to see that fish in that clear water, pitch a drop shot out in front of them, and let them come to it. Because they can see a long ways in this water. God, he is mean. Got a bad attitude. Oh, just like that. You can see these fish are healthy. They're up shallow, cruising, looking for a meal, chasing little baby perch. Just a good, fun way to catch them. Throw topwater around, keep your drop shot rigged up so when you do see one, if he doesn't eat your topwater, turn around and pitch that drop shot on him. The area we're targeting today is obviously clear water. We're targeting smallmouth, but what this area is one giant, massive river flat. And the river channel kind of snakes through this flat, and it creates these little edges and it creates these grass lines that these smallmouth can transition up and down. They can swim looking for these small baby perch and whatever other bait they can find in there. And that's really what we're looking for, right? We've got main lake on the outside, we've got this big flat. These fish are coming off the spawn and they're working their way out toward the main lake, and they're setting up on these little river channel bends and these nice solid edge weed lines where they can transition from the sand to the grass, and that's where they're feeding. A little tip when you're doing this too is always try to keep the sun at your back. If you keep it on your back, you can see through that water a lot better and see a lot further out there. Really up your odds of seeing them before they see you. Oh, he almost, oh gosh, it's a giant. Got it. Oh, stay on there. That one is fired up. Right on those sand breaks. Cover, oh, he's got buddies with him too. He's got, oh gosh, wild. One thing with smallmouth is they love an edge. He's got a ton of power. I've got all 3 treble hooks on him. Yeah, come here, come here. I don't want any treble hooks in my mouth or in my hand. This is a perfect example of why I like to throw, 3 treble hook baits. It's not harming the fish at all. You want as many opportunities to land that fish as possible. You work too hard to catch him, you want to take advantage of it. So another beautiful, shallow, clear water smallmouth, just covering water, getting on these edges, sand to grass transitions, throwing that topwater, walking bait, calm conditions that come from a long ways. And that disturbance keeps them from being able to see the bait very well and just ups your odds of getting them to bite. Got a little 1-2 punch going on today. Another beautiful, shallow, clear water smallmouth, just covering water.
One thing to remember, whether you're fishing for smallmouth like Brandon is today or largemouth, whenever they're on a grass line, look for irregularities. Little turns, little hooks, a small point. A lot of times an irregularity, that's where the biggest ones will be.
Let me give you a little bit more detail on the baits that I'm throwing during this summertime smallmouth clear water extravaganza. Stormarashi topwalker, and then I've got this bait tied up to a 20-pound Seagar monofilament line and then to a 40-pound Seagar braided line. The braid is very limp, and so this mono is a little bit more stiff, and it's gonna keep those hooks from wanting to hang up on themselves. And so that's my covering water technique. But if the fish don't commit, or if I see them just cruising, I reach for my trusty friend, the drop shot. And it's a Zoom Z drop, throwing it on a 1/0 drop shot hook, fluorocarbon leader, to a 15-pound Seagar smackdown braid, and it's in flash green, so I can see that when I make the cast. I can see it sinking, so that if a fish does eat it on the fall, I can see that. And then I've got a VMC teardrop tungsten drop shot weight. Going over. Got him. Just sitting, I mean, textbook example of hunting for smallmouth. As we were talking about the last one we caught, just watched a new group of fish swimming down that edge. Come here, buddy. Hey. There we go. That one kept his eye on the ball. Switched the bait up a little bit that time. The last one I caught threw my bait. Had that little wacky rig worm sitting there. Picked it up, threw it on there. Got another one. The thing with smallmouth is they love to hunt in wolf packs. They like to cruise down an edge. It's just like hunting, you know, whitetails and stuff. They like to have an edge. Smallmouth do it because they're hunting. The bait fish are in those grass lines. So you've got these grass to sand transitions that also, gosh, right there, create these awesome ambush points for these smallmouth on the bait. And this one's got more with him. So you've got these little transition areas where these smallmouth can ambush. You've got depth changes, and you've got clear water smallmouth. Show you guys exactly what we're looking at and exactly where that smallmouth came from. So hop up here, come check this out. This is the hard grass line, and then you've got this shadow because we're on this side of it. So it's just like sunlight creates a shadow, and we're just cruising, going up this grass line, and the smallmouth, they're swimming up and down either on the inside or the outside. And that's where all the bait fish are living. They're in hiding around that, and those smallmouth are hunting. One question I get all the time is, how do I feel so comfortable fishing clear water reservoirs, rivers, those type of things? And it really came from my background. Growing up in Idaho, we had a ton of clear water fishery, and that's really where I got my feet wet, learned how to catch these fish, and so I feel comfortable in that clear water. I actually prefer the clear water because I'm comfortable with those techniques, and I really feel like it just suits my style better. And so when I compete, that allows me to kind of have a one-up on some of the guys that maybe grew up fishing a lot of dirtier water. And so here we are today, fishing clear water. I feel right at home. We're catching smallmouth, and I'm doing the things that I love. Oh God, get it. Got him. See that? I saw him up behind it, slowed it down just a little bit. Came up like a shark on a seal. Just demolished it right on that sand transition. How am I gonna get my hands on that thing? I'm trying to put the hooks in my face. Come here, let's grab on the back. Look at that thing. Oh my gosh. Giant, fat summertime smallmouth with the 1-2 punch. If you want to catch giant summertime clear water smallmouth, you guys got to try this 1-2 punch. Walking baits, covering water, and a drop shot. 1-2 punch gets it done.
When I'm preparing for a Bass Pro Tour event, I know spinnerbaits have been a big part of my tournament strategy my whole career. You know, there's a lot of different ways you can organize and store them. What I really like is using a box like this right here so that I have all the options and I can put any bait that I might need for that day where it's ready to use. So this one has dividers that you can move around. I can put different sizes, different blade combinations, and keep them separated out. There's no way on a competition day that I'm going to need more spinnerbaits than are going to fit in this box, but I know right where they're at, and it's going to keep me organized and efficient on the water.
Hey, a bladed jig, it is one of the most popular techniques in the country, but there's little tricks to catching more bass. Today is In the Zone. Just another dandy. Oh. You know, one of the most popular baits in the country, really the last few years, is a bladed jig. And I remember the first time I looked at this thing, I'm like, really? What is that? And here's what it is. It is one of the most powerful tools in bass fishing for catching big ones. I mean, a little chub, top, dead center. The other side of it is how you fish this thing. You don't just throw it out and reel it in full speed. The more erratic that you can make this bait, the more powerful it'll be. You can throw this bait with 20-pound fluorocarbon, and really what that line does, it lets that bait stay above the grass, but when it breaks free, that 20-pound line, it holds it up. This is a 1/2 ounce Strike King Thunder Cricket in green pumpkin, and I've got a Strike King Blade minnow on. Yep. It's got a really big hook to sustain that 20-pound fluorocarbon. Look at that. Look how perfect. When that Thunder Cricket dropped, tonk. The tools that I was using on the lake with it, 20-pound Seagar Abrazex, a big Daiwa bladed jig rod, and absolutely torque down and hammer them when they bite. And that rod has a real soft tip, and it lets those big ones get it. Oh, look at you, you melon head. Yes! That is so awesome, man! Do me a favor, get you a handful of Thunder Crickets and get you a whole pile of those. Hello everyone, we are at the Bass Pro Shop's Outdoor World, where each week we introduce one of the longest running fishing programs on outdoor TV. We call it the Bass Pros. On today's show, Timmy Horton, one of the best southern offshore anglers, well, he's gonna show us how to do that way up north in Minnesota. Then, adding a nail weight to your wacky worm could give it killer action this year. That's today's In the Zone. But first, Chris Lane is gonna show us by just changing your retrieve just a little bit, well, it could save the day.
The vibrating jig is an amazing way to catch a lot of fish. One thing is that retrieves can help you catch a lot more. Pop, quick, fast, pop, pop, and then it's a tick, tick. You hit that grass, pop, pop. We're gonna show you a few ways to maximize your fish catching. Nice fish there. Vibrating jig over the grass, big largemouth. Just like that, we'll let it go, get another one. So with that fish, the grass is about 1 foot, 2 foot under the water. I made long cast with it, and then I'm on it really quick. Popping it, pop, quick, fast, pop, 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 and then let it hit the grass, pop, pop. You want to keep it up on top, because if you let it go down too low, you're gonna get bogged up in the grass. So these fish right now, they're hiding right on the edge of the grass, kind of down in it. That way when you bring that bait over the top of it, boom, they come out and get it. Here we've just come up off of this ledge, and there's a lot of grass down there, so it's just kind of a steady retrieve until you feel the grass, and then it's a tick, tick. There he is, right there, big one. Oh! God, I was there for the jump. I was doing it for the jump. So as you can see with that fish there, a little bit different. It's throwing in about 6 foot of water. The grass is a little deeper. Reeling it a little slower, pop, pop, a little bit slower, and just load it up on it. Caught that fish, came up jump, he came off, power pull down. Let's catch another one. We just caught a couple of really nice fish. One thing I would recommend, retie. When that big one bites, you got them. This is just a vibrating jig, 1/2 ounce white, 15-pound Bass Pro Shop fluorocarbon, the only way to go. Today I'm throwing a Johnny Morris Platinum Series 7.3 rod, medium heavy, 8:3:1 gear ratio from Bass Pro Shop. Key for speed right now. So as we've drifted off this point, we're gonna make some long casts out here where the grass is gonna be a lot more sparse. So we're gonna sit out there and pop it. A straight retrieve is perfectly fine. And then as soon as you feel it tick that grass, pop, pop. You tick that grass, it comes through, you tick it, hangs up, pop, pop, pop. When you pop it through the grass like that, it triggers that fish to bite like that. In the grass with a chatterbait, we got him. So this retrieval here was the grass is more in patches right here. It's not all together. You can see just got one long string piece of milfoil right there. And all we were doing is coming through, you hit the grass, pop, pop, let it go. Brrr, pop, pop, bam, and he smoked it. Couldn't resist it. Nice little chunker. We'll go back and get another one. You know, there's several ways to fish a vibrating jig. Pop, quick, fast, pop, pop, tick, tick. You hit that grass, pop, pop. If you're out there at the right time and you've got the right equipment and the right technique, you'll catch a lot more fish. Every now and then, give it the old pop, pop and see what happens.
Well, 2 things about offshore bass. Number 1, at times they're very hard to find. And when you do find them, well, they're not the easiest to catch, except if you're Timmy Horton. He's going to show us all of his tricks.
You know, one of the big misconceptions is deep cranking is a southern deal. You know, every time I come up north, if you find one thing, if you find water with good fertility to it, you're going to find great deep cranking. There we go. That's a big one. That is a big one right there, guys. Oh yes, look at this giant. Look at this, look at this. Oh gosh, what a fish. Look at that. Absolute tub right there, guys. He smoked it. Well, you don't think they're built right? Look at that. I mean, he's probably only 17 inches long, and that fish will push 4 pounds. Gorgeous. You know, we're here in Minnesota, and one thing that is consistent, if you can find a good rough bottom, and what I mean by that, a lot of gravel where those crayfish and those brim are gonna get, and it is made for deep cranking. This lake is very fertile. It's got a, you know, what I call a stain to it. And when you have that, a crankbait is a great lure because they're not feeding on visual as much. When they're not feeding on visual, they're feeding on sound, and with their lateral line, nothing beats a crankbait banging around on that hard bottom. And that feels so good. There's one. I mean, it was coming through that rough patch. Look at this fish. Are you kidding me? That's a tub. Oh my gosh, that's a giant. Oh my goodness, look at that. Look at that. I can't even get in there. Oh, look at that fish. That's a 5. Tell me we ain't having fun.
You know, the biggest thing that I look for, if I've never been to a place, I get my navionics mapping out and I just graph. You know, I look for where these big flats are going to come out and you've got those real tight contour lines. And that's where the rough bottom is going to be, where those drops are. And when you find some rock right on that drop, that's really where they're going to be loaded up. You know, these schools that I marked so far this morning are not massive schools, but you can tell by looking at the fish, they're really big. Most of the fish, regardless of the species, are going to be at a given depth at any given time in the lake. That's where the most oxygen is, and that's where that thermocline is going to be. Today is no different. I really started seeing those fish being aggressive in 10 to 12 foot of water. That's where they were located, and that's where we graphed the entire time. Sometimes when you get close to a spot, you'll push them. You always got to be looking for that. You'll push them out off the drop, and you'll get back on them, and you'll really see them. When we're out on these drops and these ledges, one thing that we're trying to do is go in and out and stay at that depth the entire time. Now you can look at your navionics mapping and get a good idea of where those turns are going to be, but it's still not a perfect science. So when we're out doing those what I call figure eights, going in and out, when I see fish, I'm going to really look at that location several times. Oh yeah, see the dots? All right, I'm going to get off of it just a little bit here. Keep going, keep going. Oh yeah, there's definitely some fish right here. But I knew if we really found them, we would find the magic. I could just tell about the fertility of the lake and the few fish that I had already caught, how big they were, how they were built, that I was on the right lake to throw a great big deep diving crankbait. And I'm gonna tell you, when we found them, it was incredible. There's a fish. Oh my goodness, he hit it coming up. That's another good one too. Look at this bass, are you kidding me? All of these are just giants. Another absolute tub. No swinging these fish. Oh, yes. Look at that. Are you kidding me? All of them are just big ones, I mean. Gorgeous.
Hey, a lot of times when you're fishing offshore, speed kills. Don't take a lot of time taking pictures or looking at what you just caught. Keep that school fired. You'll catch a lot more this summer.
I'm gonna tell you, we're right in my wheelhouse now. We're catching big bass on big deep diving crankbaits. There's nothing in the world I'd rather do. When you get them firing, it's as special as it gets. You know, we're trying to stay on the edge, so I've got to throw parallel casts to the drop. If I don't and I get too far to the left, I'm hitting up into grass. So it's so important to get your boat position, to hold everything just right. So you got to take consideration of the wind, you know, how the boat is holding. And when you take all of that into consideration, see, I came through with a clean cast that time. And if I was to go left too far, I'm gonna be fighting that vegetation. Yeah, well, you know, when we're talking about a rough patch, you know, you're gonna have gravel. Most of this, especially up north, are sandy bottoms. But when you find that gravel and that rock, it's where the crayfish are gonna get, all of the bait fish. And when they come out here in the summertime and get offshore, boy, they can be magical when you find them. There we go, we got them right here, guys. Same cast. Gosh, this one is pulling now. Oh yes, look at this, are you kidding me? Oh! Did he take that Z-boss or what? Look at this fish. Oh my gosh, he took it. Look at this. Oh, keep him down, keep him down. That's why you gotta have that soft tip on that rod. Oh, look at this fish. I'm telling you guys, the big plug, we are dialed on. Look at this right here. Look at that fish, not a blemish on him. Look how wide. Deep cranking, you've got to have just the right rod, reel, lure, line. Everything has to come together. We were using a Zuma Z-Boss 20 in Grand Shad, 12-pound Bass Pro Shops XPS4 carbon, and a Duckett Pro Series Timmy Horton Edition 711 cranking rod. Spent several years getting this rod just right, and I really love it. With a Lew's BB1 Pro, I really like that wide spool, and it allows for those really long casts. One of the biggest things is keeping those fish fired up, and the key on that is making the exact cast. They can feel everything that's going on around them, and what will happen is when you really get them going, you will get fish from different directions coming in and getting really tight. Now they're on the look, they're looking around, they're getting very competitive, and when you get them competitive, you can keep catching them. But the biggest key is make that exact cast each time. Don't go off to the right or the left. Really know your lineup and where you're throwing, because if you go off to the side, that's going to get them moving around. Come through that same area each time, and you're going to find them really grouped up. There's another big one. I mean, a giant. And what I do, I gauge my distance to make the cast. You know, if you're on them too much and you make that cast way out there and you're too close, you're going to be coming up by the time you get to them. This is another big one. Look at this. I mean, a good one right here. Get him in and we'll talk about that cast just a little bit. There was one with him bigger than this one. This is a 3.5, 4 pounder. Oh my gosh. I mean, you can't even get around them. Look at this. Hey, would you see them coming in like that with them? You are dialed on them. Got hooks everywhere. And that Z-Boss. All right, so before we were rudely interrupted there by that bass, when you come off of the spot, you got to keep going a little bit, about 20 yards, cut the big engine off, put your trolling motor down and then stop. Hit your waypoint. If you get too far past it, you're not going to reach them. If you get too close, your bait's already going to be coming up by the time it hits the strike zone. That is as important a scenario on deep cranking as anything. There's nothing like winding the big plug. Just cast after cast. Right there's that rough patch. There he is. Look at that rod bow up. Look at that rod. Another absolute tub right here. One thing that's important to remember is when you load up on these bass, don't go to just winding in as quick as you can. You got to remember you're using light line to get that lure down to its maximum depth with that 12-pound test. And you've got treble hooks. So take it slow. When those fish get to the boat and they need to run, be ready to let your drag go, maybe even hit your thumb bar to release some of that pressure, and you're going to land a lot more fish. Keep that rod low to the water and try to keep them from jumping as best you can. Gorgeous. I love it, I love it. Let's get right back out there. There's another giant. Look at that rod. Look at that rod, guys. I'm gonna tell you, dream of days like this and finding locations like this. You know, we've all seen where we have places where we're catching fish after fish. Oh, look at this one. Look at this one, guys. Oh, that'll take you to your knees. Oh, look at this. Oh my gosh, look at that bass. But when you're this far north and that is as big as they get and you're catching them loaded up, you're really fooling them with the right technique. And boy, today was really special. Look at this fish. Look at this. Oh, we got him with both hooks now. Oh my gosh. Hey, I am shaking. What a spot. Incredible. That's 5.5 pounder all day long. Gorgeous.
You know, the evening before a Bass Pro Tour event, it's a busy night for me. You know, I'm doing my tackle prep, changing line, rigging baits, getting ready for the next day. And the single most important influencer about what may happen is going to be the weather. So I've got everything on my phone. You know, I've got Weather Underground, I've got Wind Finder, I've got my radar. I can see by the hour when things change, when a front may hit, you know, when a cold front's going to pass. the temperatures that it's going to be. Those things are all critical to my game plan, so I'm prepared for it, so I can rig for either finesse fishing or power fishing as the day changes. The weather has the largest influence on a bass's behavior, and you have to be prepared for it.
Hey, are you addicted to throwing a wacky worm? Like it's the only thing you throw? You want to catch more? Just nail it. It's today's In the Zone. Nice one. Look what just happened. One thing to add to your arsenal this year, and it's possibly one of the easiest, oh no. It's one of the easiest techniques in bass fishing is a nail-weighted worm. You know, one of the most popular baits to catch a lot of bass is a nail-weighted worm. Some people call it a Nico rig. The main thing to know about this is the size of the nail weight that you really want to put into the worm. We're only fishing like 4 to 7 feet of water, and I got a little bitty tungsten nail in here. And if we go out in, you know, 20 to 40 feet of water, you just upsize. But one of the main things about this is just let that thing, let it be natural and let it do its own thing. And that bait will stand on its nose. It gives them a different look on a productive, already used presentation of a wacky rig worm. Today we were really shallow, and you can go to just a small tungsten weight, insert it into the head of that worm, and here's one of the biggest keys for a nail weight. Hook backwards from where the nail went in. And really what that'll do, it'll just let that bait bounce on the bottom. You want to catch a lot of bass with the potential of giants. Got it? Throw the nail weight. Another nice one. Wow. If you notice, one of the things I do is you never hammer them. When one bites it like that, I mean, that's a chunk. Just don't crack them. Just reel set. Look how he's got that bait in there. I mean, that's a mouthful of nail weight right there, boy. Hey, this year when you go fishing, get yourself a pile of little tungsten nails and you will catch a load. And here's the thing, when I say you will catch a load of those, you will wreck them. Hello everyone, and welcome to Bass Pro Shop's Outdoor World. And if you look behind me, probably the best fishing department of all time. In fact, everything you see on this little program can be found right there. On today's show, well, in the fall, the bass are definitely on the move. Randy Howell's going to show us how to chase them down. Then, one of the most critical things when you're fishing a swim jig, it's what you put on the back of it. That's today's In the Zone. But first, Edwin Evers, well, he's riding fence lines. But wait, what? That makes no sense, right? Trust me, Edwin Evers, he knows exactly what he's doing.
Oh yeah. There's a few things in bass fishing that you don't want to pass up. You know, a isolated boat dock, a beaver hut, and one of the others is a fence row. It's just one of those things, no matter where I'm at in the country, I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna fish a fence row, and I'm gonna tell you why. On a lot of lakes that are void of cover, you know, this is a great example of what a fence row will do for you. You know, when you've got floating logs, they always get caught in fence row, so it just adds a little bit of a extra cover to that fence row. And a lot of times, those floating logs will be out here even deeper from when the lake was lower, you know, that you might not even see, and that's just another reason why you don't ever pass up a fence row. the fence. One thing that's really great about fences is that a bass, they can follow a fence, you know, they can spawn up shallow like this on this fence, or they can follow this fence all the way out to deep water. So it's a natural place, you know, highway that they can just move back and forth really easy. And when I'm fishing it, I'm fishing high percentage, you know, whatever the depth is that they may be in, I can do it pretty quick because that fence covers all of the equation. There's a fish. The little ones swim away from the fence and the big ones swim in it. You know, that's another great thing about fences is, you know, they're generally found on bodies of water that fluctuate a bunch, you know, because they're trying to keep their livestock, you know, contained, and they have to build a fence out in the water for when it goes low. But it's also great for those bass because, you know, this water's falling hard and they're just really easy. They can just move to the next post and next post and next post until they find the depth that they're still comfortable in. Oh, you know, one of the reasons I think a fence row is good or different, or why bass use them, people drive up and down fence rows, cows walk up and down fence rows, so what happens, it compacts the dirt. The ground is actually lower where those tracks are. It gives a bass a hard spot to spawn on. You know, they don't have to work as hard to make a nest, you know, get all that silt out of it. They'll spawn right in those tracks coming down those fence rows. There he is. Doesn't look like it right here, but that's the great thing about a fence. You can catch them all the way up shallow, and then as I come out here, I'm still following this creek channel right here, or this fence line, and it's met the creek channel. That's what a fence looks like on your depth finder. It's a 3-wire fence. You can see the T-post, the wires. Get a little bit more on it. This is the wire. That's the wire. I'm right on it right now. Staying on it. That'd be a post. Wire, wire, wire. Good one. That's the thing about it, you know, fences are just, it's a high percentage spot. You know, think of it as a highway for a bass. They can move shallow, they can move deep, very easy. You know, they just can use this thing as a travel highway, just like we drive up and down the highway at the house.
One thing happens in the fall when the shad moves shallow, the bass absolutely follow. Randy Howell is going to show us that's the time to match the hatch.
There's one. What a good bite. Short strike. He come up behind that thing. I was reeling it fast. Just sitting there talking about this grass and all these shad, this late fall pattern. And there we go, the topwater bite is on. That's what we were looking for right there. That's a nice fish right there. He got that old Walking Boss Jr., and that might be the ticket today. Out here on a heavily pressured area, just had a big tournament out here on Lake Gunnersville, and trying to learn how to catch fall bass. If you guys fish tournaments and you go in the late fall, and it's always tough to get bit in areas where lots of people are fishing at. So trying to figure out how to make them bite once you find the shad and you find the area where you know the fish are, then you got to show them a lot of things so you can make them bite. And right now, that was one of that little Walking Boss Jr. Finding fish in the fall is real important to making them bite because they go through little small periods of time where they may feed occasionally through the day, or you might get a reaction bite. So finding them and getting your bait in their strike zone over and over and over is the key to being able to catch some. When it starts to get cold and the leaves are changing on the trees, those fish are following the bait fish, whether they're back shallow in the creek or out on the main lake. You just kind of find the bait fish and you'll find the bass. Then you got to make them bite, and that's the next hard part. Going along, I saw these fish kind of breaking into the shad, breaking into the grass there, and they were on the outside edge of that grass, and they wouldn't hit top water right away, so I picked up a lipless Pro Ripper Livingston bait and started throwing that in there, and that lipless bait, that makes those fish bite sometimes when they want to bite something else on the surface. That is what the bass are looking for, and that's what we're looking for. It's the right size, kind of the size of a lipless crankbait or a little small Topwater junior bait. When you see that, you know you're in the right area. Now you just got to make the fish bite, because that looks a lot more realistic than anything we've got in our boat, you know it? So, but the shad got full bites, so maybe the bass will next. There he is. There we go, that's a good one, it feels like. Come on out that grass. I just said, found all those shad. I caught one of those shad. I think I still got him in this grass. Is he still hooked? I think I still got him on. Yeah, I got him on there. There's so much grass right here. He's not big, but I don't want to get the grass all over my boat. A nice little keeper. Look at that grass on the hooks. I just started throwing it all around that grass, and right where those shad were, that's the Pro Ripper right there, kind of a shiny color. Look how fat that little dude is. He is eating a lot of shad around that grass. And this is the hardest thing sometimes, is to get a bait in the grass without it fouling up long enough for the fish to see it working effectively to bite it. But we did that time. That's why you gotta have a whole arsenal of baits laid out like I've got on the deck here. You know, I've got the walking baits, I got the lipless baits, I got the blade jigs, I got the soft plastic jerk baits, a little bit of everything, and you kinda gotta show them a lot of stuff from day to day. One day they might bite the Topwater better, next day they might bite the lipless bait better, but you gotta have everything ready this time of the year, because it's a tough time to make them bite when they've got all those pretty little shad like I just caught to eat, you know. When they're chasing shad like that. Oh, there he is. That's a big one. Oh my gosh, what a bite that was. Did you see that? Holy cow, stay on there, baby. Oh, I let that Livingston just lay there. Oh, oh, he came off. Oh, he was barely hooked. See, sun's going down late in the afternoon. If you just have an hour or two to get out here and practicing for a tournament, just like this, see, this activity I'm seeing on the surface here wouldn't be happening with the sun up, but right now I'm able to find them. Once you find them, you can come back and catch them later. Yeah, we found an area that had a lot of shad, had some fish busting. We actually saw some good quality fish feeding in that area. I knew if we could just put some time in there the next day, we could really capitalize on some of those fish feeding on those shad.
Hey, when bass get keyed in on shad in the fall, they know the exact size of what they want to eat. When you're out next fall, pay attention to the exact size of the shad, match it, you're going to catch more bass.
Well, this morning we get out here and it's super foggy, you know, very, very cool overnight. We're having lower water temperatures. Fishing has gotten slower and slower as it gets colder and colder here in these southern lakes. Fish don't really want to bite a whole lot, so the morning started out a little bit slow. We got a couple hours in yesterday evening. We rode through this area yesterday afternoon, and shad were just all over the surface in the mouths of these pockets and points. When it's cold nights, late fall, those fish, their shad are down, and they're down in the grass. Get out there and put those couple hours just riding and looking in for those shad, and it'll make a big difference in your success at finding fish, you know, the next day that you go out fishing. And anytime you have clear water and small bait, you kind of need to downsize your bait sometimes. And so this new junior model of the Walking Boss Part 2 has a real unique pitter-patter sound with that lip on that bait. But plus you've got the sound of the electronic bait fish shad. You got to do everything you can to help get a bite when it's tough conditions. Oh, what a bite. Oh, wow. What a bite that was. That fish smashed it. That shows me right there now that they're going to bite some top water this morning. The old Walking Boss Part 2 Junior got out late and found those bait fish in this area, and I had a hunch that this area could be good with the bait fish. We downsized because we saw that shad was a small shad. Went down to the Walking Boss Junior Part 2, which is a little smaller bodied bait. A few casts and boom, that fish crushed it. So I think we're gonna have more bites like this to come, I sure hope. Nice little keeper. The first bite on top water was very aggressive this morning, and I thought, man, this is good. I hope this is gonna be the sign for the rest of the day that we're gonna smash them in this foggy, cloudy weather on top water. But then it got really slow because we had no wind. It was very slick, calm, clear water. All right, Main Lake is not the deal this morning, so we gotta move around a little bit. You gotta keep covering water. That's the main thing. Using baits. Baits you can move fast and cover a lot of water this time of the year until you figure out what they're biting and where they're located. Man, they're breaking right there. There you go. You gotta try to get out there quick as you can and get that 2 or 3 second window. Move it up real fast, get it right to him. Come on, baby, get it. Twitching in that grass, twitching in that grass. Yeah, there you go. Oh, finally get a bite on the bladed jig. Slick, calm conditions are always the toughest conditions you can get in this time of the year in the fall when you're seeing these fish break. It's not a very big one, but looking around, keeping your eyes open and up ahead, I see them breaking on that point. Right now, you gotta just keep doing whatever you can, throwing a little bit of everything at them until you get them one to bite like that. Get the bait on them right while they're feeding. In that frenzy, you can kind of make some of them bite. Any artificial bait is not gonna look and be and act as natural as that shad that they're chasing around in the grass. So you gotta do everything you can, like I say, to be versatile and to make them bite. There we go. That was a pretty nice one. Saw him busting some shad again. Another deal right there, just keeping your eyes open. I'm working down that shoreline, I look out here and I see fish chasing bait. Get the old Walking Boss Junior, the little bait back out, and boom. There we go. You see that? Once again, a typical fall bass chasing bait. Not on the top or the bottom, just roaming around out in open water, and boom. Well, this time of the year is notorious for being good for just an hour or so and then going totally dead on you. And they did that this morning, and I've learned that a lot from Major League Fishing and the Bass Pro Tour. But during those lulls, you gotta just keep your head down. You gotta keep focused on those holes in the grass and targeting those areas that you know the fish are. And don't run all over the lake trying to find more fish, because once you establish an area like we did today that has a lot of bait fish, has a lot of fish breaking and showing themselves, you know there's plenty of bass there. Don't run off looking for more. Just stay around there and keep working them slowly, methodically, and you'll make a few bites occasionally. And then when that flurry happens late in the day, like it had for us today after lunch, boom, 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 you capitalize and you catch what you need to catch. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Golly, yes, boy. Yes, sir. Don't give up on that top water Walking Boss, because this is why you keep throwing it in the fall, boys. fish like that right there. Look at that big gunnerful beast. It's your saw today. We started from scratch. We figured out where they were, what they wanted to bite, and when they wanted to bite, and we were able to have a good day. And it was all about staying in one area that had all the bait where the bass were. There we go. Look at that. Just laid that down, picked it right back up, and threw it out there, and it's slick calm when you least expect it. But just like the score tracker showed us on the Bass Pro Tour, midday, fish always start back feeding, even when it looks dead. And boom, that's what you get, big fish like that. When you stick with the right bait in the right area where all the shad are, all of a sudden, boom, it'll pay off. So that's why you don't leave fish to find fish. You gotta stay where you know they're at. And all of a sudden, midday, turn on and you get a big bite like this.
When I'm out here getting ready for the Bass Pro Tour, one thing that I make sure that I am, and that's organized. Here's a little tip that I like to use is I'll take my line and I'll wrap my Bass Pro rod twice in a circle, and it wraps the line around the eye. That way when I put it in my nitro rod locker correctly, that way in the morning when you wake up, all your rods are organized 100%. And if something changes where you need a topwater or worm and you reach in there and you grab it and you rip it out, hey, you're ready to go with no tangles.
You know, swim jig is a highly effective tool. Sharpen that tool by changing the trailer. It's today's In the Zone. There's one. That's a good one. Probably the most asked question I get about swim jig is, what trailer do I want for that? And really through the years, I've developed my own system of 3 different style trailers. Number 1 is a Strike King Menace Grub. Number 2 is a Strike King Rage Craw. And number 3 is a Strike King Rage Swimmer. And the amazing thing about a swim jig, it catches them in really, really cold water, all the way up to 90-degree water. And one of the things to always remember about it is, the colder the water, the less action you want on your swim jig trailer. And as the water warms, I'm gonna wanna have more action in it. If it's real cold and the water's, basically in the 40s or 50s, I want something that does not throw a lot of water. I'm gonna throw that Menace Grub. It's very subtle when the water's cold. When the water warms up is when I wanna start displacing water. I want a lot of action. That's when I go to that Rage Craw. It pushes a lot of water. It's basically waving, hey, look at me, I'm a swim jig, come eat me. And really my in-between is that Rage Swimmer. That is a nice, oh gosh. Oh no. I mean a little chub. Number 1 thing to remember about a swim jig: colder, more subtle, less action. The warmer it is, more action in your soft plastic. That's what'll happen. Hello everyone, and welcome to Bass Pro Shop's Outdoor World here in Springfield, Missouri. We're right next door. You have the Wonders of Wildlife National Museum and Aquarium. If you're into the outdoors, this place is for you. On today's show, we all know springtime is the time to catch giant smallmouth. None better to learn from than Kevin VanDam on gin clear water. Then I'm going to show you why using braided line on your spinning reels could change your fishing. That's today's In the Zone. But first, David Walker's going to show us by just changing the size of your weight, well, it can absolutely save the day.
pulled him up out of all that grass. It's a great way to start the day right there. Where I'm fishing at today, there's a lot of grass, and so the thickness of the grass is going to dictate how heavy a weight I'm going to use. Where that grass is really topped out, or it's real thick and heavy, I'm going to use a big 2-ounce sinker. And where that grass is just tall and a deeper grass, like that last fish was in, I'm going to use a 1-ounce sinker. And then when I get on the outside of the grass, I'll be using all the way down to a 3/8 ounce sinker. So really, the size of the weight is going to be determined by the grass that I can see. As you can see right in here, that really thick grass was there, and now it's tapered out here some, so I'm kind of on the outside edge of that. So when you get to that outside edge, if you're dropping a 2-ounce sinker, your rate of fall is crazy fast. So what I did was I picked up this worm it's a big worm, but I got a lot smaller weight on it than the other ones because I don't need quite as much weight to get through that canopy because I'm basically on the outside edge of the grass. The grass is a little bit shorter. I'm going to move down to a 3/8 ounce sinker and a big worm. Oh, golly. Couldn't be right now. Oh. Come here, you. Come here. Come here. God, look at that. Oh man. Now that fish landed that big worm this morning. Got him. What a great fish. Awesome. Jigs is probably one of my favorite lures out there. But this one here is kind of a spin on a jig, and what it is what we're talking about is a punch skirt. Now this right here is a 1-ounce sinker. So I'm going to use this in those areas where I can still visibly see the grass. I know that it's thick, but it's not topped out there. So basically it's a Texas rig, but it has a skirt on there. So it gives you the profile of what a jig would be like, but yet it's super weed free. It goes right through that heavy stuff, all the way to the bottom, because that's what's key. You want to fish the bottom of this. You want to be all the way down through that canopy, down on the bottom, down to where those fish are. Come here, you. Come here. Oh, got him. Man, nice fish. Look at that right there. He's got that all the way down in there, convinced that that was dinner. Hanging out in that grass, down in there deep though. I think that's the key right there. Where I see just a clump of it that it just looks solid, at that point, I'm going to use this big 2-ounce sinker. And that's going to allow me to get through that. If I drop that light sinker, it would just lay up there on top. Now this one here is a Z-Man palmetto bug. This big sinker is what's key on this deal right here because that thing weighs 2 ounces. It's going to go through that really heavy, thick stuff and get that bait down there. Get out of there. God. Come on, fish. That. I think I feel a fish. There he is, buried up in there. We got him. You see how deep that fish was in that grass. But see, that's why when you're fishing really thick grass, this thing will take it down through all that real thick, heavy grass and get it down in where that fish was hiding out. As you can see, that big weight got that little bait down there to him, and we was able to dig him out. Next time you go in the summertime looking for some action to catch some fish, look for a lake that's got some grass in it and really key in on those grass fish.
Kevin VanDam, jerkbaits and big smallmouth bass. How many times have we heard that, right? And even though Kevin's mastered the jerkbait, he's gonna teach us you can never stop learning.
So we're just heading out. It's first thing in the morning. It's 55-degree water temperature, spring of the year. I'm in northern Michigan. These fish are pre-spawn, they're staging, and they're covering these big flats. It takes a lot of time to find where they're at, but when you find them, you can do real well. So dark and cloudy like this, they'll definitely roam around a lot. So let's go give it a shot. Springtime in Michigan can be 80 degrees or it can be 40 and blowing and raining. And this week we had a little bit of all of it. And I just knew that I had to find an area with some fish in it. And one of the best ways under those conditions is to throw a jerkbait. There's a big one. Oh my, did that one get it? That's a big one. You can tell right away. Oh yeah. Big fat pre-spawn, just wallowing. Love it when that water's cold like that. These fish are getting ready for the spawn. Oh man, and just hammered it. Normally I like a lot of wind for this jerkbait, but my goodness. It's a straight up, I mean that fish right there, look at the belly. They're just so fat. That's a heavy, 4, that fish is a heavy 4 something right there, and it's not that long. You got every bit of it too. I'm just throwing a 300 series Strike King KVD jerkbait. This flat right here is, it's 7 to 10 foot deep, and it's perfect. That IU color is real natural. When the water's clear and calm like this, you want something natural, and that's a heck of a fish right there. A jerkbait has always been one of my favorite baits. What I like about it, when I've got clear water, it's just such a great search bait. I'm gonna find where the bass are at. They're gonna at least follow it. And if I'm using the right one in the right depth zone, it's really good at catching them too. There's so much expansive flats on these lakes up here that you gotta have something that you can cover a lot of water with. I just love a jerkbait because it's so good at triggering bass to bite. And in this pre-spawn time, that's when it's at its best. This is a bait that suspends, and it's hard to beat that, to find fish and to catch them. Under these conditions, when it's so calm, and I mean, this water's just crystal clear. So you have to really make these fish react too. It's spring of the year, pre-spawn, so they're active for sure, but you want to have a pretty aggressive retrieve. The water temperature's in the mid 50s, but I'm really working that bait hard for cooler water. I'm not pulling it real far forward, but I'm really snapping it hard and just trying to make it erratic. 2-3 jerks, then pause, 2-3 jerks. Not real long pauses. I don't want them, it's so clear, you don't want them to get such a good look at it, but it's critical to have that bait start and stop. So I'm always, using slack in my line. I always use the same retrieve for a jerkbait, where I start with slack, pop that rod and point the rod right back at it. And then you can see I'm snapping it pretty hard. But when you really hit them, you'll get into them where it's hopefully every cast. There's a bit it pretty close. Oh, nice one. When they get it, they get it. And it just tells me that a lot of these fish are pretty just scattered here. Just another fat one. You know, one of the things that I think about when I know that the bite's a little off like this, you know, and that you have to really make them react, is that you got to have equipment set up to do that. So let's let him go. Nice one. So I'm using, you know, a typical jerkbait setup. It's a 610 medium heavy action rod, a lot of backbone to it. So when I'm snapping that bait, it's really making it work. I use a high-speed reel because I'm never pulling the bait towards the boat with the reel. You're always working it with that slack in the line, but the line is critical. So I'm using Bass Pro XPS, and I go up to 14-pound test for this, you know. Lighter line makes that jerkbait run deeper, but having heavier line that has less stretch really makes that bait respond. I can still throw it a really long ways, and in this crystal clear water, you know, losing 6 inches or a foot of depth isn't a big deal. They'll come a long ways if they see that bait. Having that bait respond, when I make that long bomb 50-yard cast and I start snapping it, that 14-pound line really makes that bait respond. It really makes it jump, and that's what gets those fish to react. I'm just using my technique to maximize the number of strikes to be able to find these areas where the fish are at. It's easy to slow down and fish for them with something else, but you got to find them first. Look at that right there. Solid 3-pounder. I mean, they're just, look at that.
You know, if there's one thing you can live by whenever you're jerkbait fishing is watercolor. The clearer the water, the clearer the color jerkbait you want to throw. The dirtier the water, the more color it has in it, go to a more solid color. Clear water, transparent; dirtier water, solid.
I want to show you these baits real close. So, you know, this is the 300 series deep diver. This is one of my favorites up here in northern Michigan because we have a lot of real deep lakes. So you want a bait that gets down, you know, that 10 or 12 foot zone, gets that much closer to them. You can fish it over that much deeper water. So on the deeper edges, this is really what I was focused with. And then up on the flats, I just used the standard 300, you know, with the standard bill. Both of them have a great weight transfer system, so you can cast them a long ways. Casting distance is so critical in this clear water. You got to get that thing way out there, especially in those calm conditions. You know, one of the things that I always try to do when I'm searching for them like this is try to keep that bait in the strike zone. So, you know, I'm trying to follow these edges. I can just kind of see with my polarized glasses, even in this cloud cover, I can see the drop off and the, you know, some of these rock transitions, some of the grass lines and things like that. And it's critical to take that jerk bait and just like that, I want to throw right down those edges. I want to have that bait in the strike zone the whole time. Any of these edges or transitions that I can just throw right down, that bait is going to do, you know, its job and trigger these fish, and I'm going to be able to tell what they're holding on, because usually they're on the break, they're on the top side of the break, or they're on the inside transition line. There's one fish. That's the kind you're looking for up here. We call that pure Michigan right there. I've caught these big smallmouth all over the Great Lakes, and you know, one of the big things that has really helped is this water's always been clear, but when the zebra mussels got into the Great Lakes, that really made a big difference. You know, the other invasive species is the goby, and the reason these fish are so fat, like this right here, I mean, that straight up there's a giant, is because of those gobies. They live in these rocks, and they're easy, and they're high protein. They're easy to, you know, to digest for them. And gosh, that's the reason that the smallmouth in the north have just gotten, you know, look at the belly on him right there. They just get so much girth. Just incredible, you know, healthy fish. And in the spring of the year, like this early spring and late in the fall, they don't get any bigger. That's what you're looking for. You know, colors of jerkbaits are something that I'm real fanatic about. In this clear water, You know, you want something that's real natural. You know, one of my favorites has always been that IU color. It's just a natural color that every bait fish up here, you know, the perch, the smallmouth, the rock bass, everything kind of has that light green color to it. They blend with the bottom, and it's just a real fishy looking color that looks like every kind of bait fish that they're used to eating every day. So I've just had a ton of success with it. If you go smallmouth fishing, you better have one of these in your tackle box. Good one, great big one. Let's hit the spot lock. Now this one, I moved out to the next transition line out here and put on a deep diving jerk bait. God, look at that one. Just a nice one. They're so fat they can't even get out the only way. So I've got a deep diving KVD 300 series jerk bait, and this is a really good jerk bait for pre-spawn. It's, you know, a bait designed to hit that 10 or 12 foot zone, and that's one of the things that is really important this time of year, to be able to have something for that deeper, some of those deeper stretches like that. There's one. There's our fish. Good one. Big one. Giant. Big one. My goodness. Look at that size of that fish right there. Monster. Northern smallmouth, and in the pre-spawn like this, it's so hard to beat that jerkbait. I mean, he has got the whole thing. In the spring of the year, you know, jerkbait is always a great pre-spawn bait. So it's one of my go-tos. And not only is it good for finding where they're at, it's good for catching them. Man, what a fish. Just getting ready to spawn. You know, if you get out here and you're gonna fish for smallmouth in these clear lakes, you have to have jerkbaits in your tackle box. They're just so efficient at covering that water. You know, I mix it up, you know, with a shallow and a deep, and, you know, fish like that, that's what you're gonna catch when you get around them. I mean, these are just incredible fisheries up here, and the jerkbait's just one of my favorite baits. It's something that I've always got tied on, but in the pre-spawn time of the year, it's lights out.
Hey, spinning rods and reels, they are known for sensitivity and feel. Maximize both of those things by using braided line. It's today's In the Zone. I'm not gonna lie, I was one of the people where I grew up with monofilament and fluorocarbon. I'm like, no. I don't want to ever put braided line on my spinning reels, but there are some huge advantages to using braided line on a spinning reel. 75% of my fishing now is a braided line like this to a fluorocarbon leader. But to me, one of the true benefits of this, like I could never, unless I was bombing a heavy bait, I could never make a cast like that and get 40 yards out of it. The other thing, there's one. And that's a perfect example right there. That's a good one. Oh, the man in the brown suit came to the party. Aha! Look at you! Yes, cute as a butt. This is Seagar Smackdown High Vis Green Braided Line, 15 pound. It's got less stretch, so if you have less stretch, you don't need to hammer them when you get a bite. All you need to do is lean into them. What has happened here? You hear how I got that drag backed off? The feel that you get from braid, it's like the rod is an extension of your hand to where you feel everything. Easy, cowboy. Easy, cowboy. So the three advantages of braided line. Number one, you can bomb cast. Number two, feel. And number 3, with no stretch, you're gonna always drive the hook home. Always have one spinning reel rigged up with braid. You'll definitely. Well, the doors are about to open here at Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World, where, as they say, your adventure starts, so does this episode of the Bass Pros. And on today's show, Randy Howell, he's gonna show us how downsizing your lures in the fall can lead to many bites. Then, we're gonna show you working your jerkbait the wrong direction. Well, it could end up all right. That's today's In the Zone. But first, Brandon Polinick knows a thing or two about grass and current, and he's gonna show us his favorite ways to fish it.
Ooh, hey.
Gosh, freaking big one. Oh my gosh, look at that fish on a frog. Oh my gosh. Giant largemouth. Oh my gosh, look at that thing. Oh, of course. Oh, look at that.
If you guys want to learn how to catch some fish in the summertime, big giant largemouth, eating frogs like that, you gotta stay versatile fishing these summertime clear rivers. You guys might wanna follow along. This is gonna be fun. So we just caught that fat largemouth out here frogging in the river summertime. And the thing I like to look for, obviously grass, but a little bit of current. The current keeps that water cooler. So if you think about it, there's really 3 ways to get cooler temperatures in the summertime, and that's either by current, shade from like heavy cover or bridge or something like that, or depth. And in this case, we have current and we've got grass for that heavier cover. Largemouth doesn't want to be sitting right in that main heavy current, but they want to be close to it, and that grass will filter out that heavy current and allow it to, you know, just kind of ease through there where they don't have to really work very hard. They can kind of just sit in the grass, let the current bring food to them. So it's a great place for those bigger fish to live. You know, they can spend their whole summer here. Lots of bait living around the grass. It's good, clean, healthy grass. And those largemouth can just hang out. One thing that over the years I've learned is when you're fishing rivers in the summertime and you've got current, especially a river where you've got like water fluctuation, you know, that'll rise and fall. When you have that fluctuation, you got to stay versatile because those fish will get around different types of cover. I've got a big giant beaver hut here. It's got some good deep water next to it. It's got good grass, good current flowing through it, but you got to stay versatile because the fish are changing. So if you want to keep catching fish, you got to be willing to change with them. Switching it up. In the current, in a river situation, you got so many different types of cover those fish can live around that it's good to be versatile. Still catching them on top, but switching it up to a little Stormarashi cover pop. Similar size to the frog, walking action. Good way to catch them, but a little bit more open cover. So I switch it up from the frog, go to the cover pop, staying versatile. So I just noticed over here, this beaver hut kind of extends out and it makes a little ditch out here, but it's probably a little bit deeper than what those fish want to come up all the way to the surface. It's like we were talking about being versatile. Catch them on a frog, catch them on a cover pop. Oh, there we go, right there. Being versatile is the key to fishing these summertime river patterns. Right, you pull up here. I just caught one off that hut on the cover pop. And I looked down, clear water, and noticed that ditch is running out from that beaver hut. But it was a little bit too deep for what I thought that those fish would come up. Picked up a little Z-hog, pitch it out there on a Texas rig, get bit. The one thing so far today that all the fish have had in common is a clean sandy spot, close access to deep water, whether it be a ditch or a drop into the river channel, and they've all been just outside of the current. So there's still current coming through those areas, but it's slowed down. Right? It's not just that main river ripping current. So they can just sit behind those little weed patches, get that nice, cool, oxygenated water coming at them. Not all of them are set up the same, so I can't just say, oh, I'm gonna only throw a frog at these places, because some of them have little mats around them, some of them don't. So you just have to approach them with different techniques, different baits. Be like putty, malleable, flexible. This is a mat flipper's dream. Oh, I lost him. Oh, he's still on there. Unless another one came and grabbed it. Come on, buddy. Oh, I didn't really want to pull that whole mat out of there. He's so balled up, he can't even move. That was pretty awesome. A little heavy duty mat punching, 1.5 ounce weight, big hydrilla mats. I saw that canopy as we were coming up on it. You probably even heard me say, look at that canopy. It's a little healthy largemouth. Could be a school in there, so let's get this guy back, get back in there. Staying versatile. We've got main river channel, and then you can see up there, there's a little gap, almost like a little secondary channel. And this grass is super, super thick, and that just gives an opening where those fish can swim around and ambush a little bit more. So the best way to target that is with a frog. I'm not gonna be able to pitch a drop shot in those open holes and get a fish through all this stuff. There we go, that's a good one. Good frogfish. Not a bad way to catch them right there. I saw a little bit of bait move. I don't know if that was a fry garter. It seems a little late for that, but hooked him really good. That. A big glide bait is one of those things that I just love to pick up in clear water, because it gets them aggressive, makes them come up, and it shows themselves, and they get in that aggressive mood. When I'm throwing this glide bait, I'm keeping my eyes open for those weed transitions, those edges where the fish can come out and they can ambush that bait. Then I really use the reel handle, do little 3/4 turns. And what that does, that causes that bait to glide side to side to side. And if you see a fish behind it, you just speed your handle turns up, and it'll make that bait dart harder and quicker. A lot of times they'll commit to the bait, but if they don't, I can go back with something like a drop shot and get those fish to bite, put them in the boat. So doing whatever it takes to get bit. One's right behind it. Eat it, eat it, eat it. Oh, gosh, dang it. That's a smallmouth. He nipped it once. He might still eat it. Oh, 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 oh. Got him. Came up, nipped the swim bait. I could see him out there. But I saw he turned away from my swim bait as the boat came up on him, so I picked up the drop shot. It's good to be versatile, to catch these river, clear water, summertime largemouth, and maybe a little bit of a smallmouth mixed in. This is a prime example of why you gotta stay versatile fishing these summertime clear rivers. Saw this fish follow my big glide bait in, picked up a drop shot, pitched back there and watched him go over and eat it. Such a cool way to catch them. Just watching them eat. It's good fish. Get him on the hook. Be like putty, malleable, flexible.
Schooling bass are two things. They are crazy fun and crazy frustrating, right? Well, Randy Howell is going to show us how to trick those skeptical schoolers with a couple awesome techniques.
Well, if you look around, you see I'm in the middle of a bunch of slop, a lot of grass here. And I like to throw topwater in these little small holes in those openings where the bait fish are and where you see fish busting, chasing bait up. And that's the bait you can make them bite a lot of times and get them up out of that grass and put them in the boat. And they had some shad run up out there, and you keep your eyes open, like I said before, and look for that visible feeding on the surface, and then you can come back. There's one. Come back and get them again, just like that. There we go. Same hole. I just threw over that hole second or third time, and boom, he come up and got it. Nice little keeper. Whoa, dude, hold up. There we go. Well, that'd be a 2-minute penalty right now on the Bass Pro Tour, so I'm glad we're not in the tournament right now. You gotta keep staying after it and keep making those long casts, and they will pay off. Boat position is real key, because you can get up too quickly and spook the fish, and you don't want to do that because then they're not going to bite. You've got to kind of work your way in. You know, on this one area I started way out, and as I go in I've just run the trolling motor very, very minimal and let myself drift into these areas, and I make super long casts. That's why I'm using a 7.4 medium heavy rod that's long cast rod, a Daiwa Tatula Elite long cast reel, and 50-pound Daiwa J-braid to make long casts. And you don't want to get too close up on them. You're going to catch more fish on a long cast than you ever will getting your boat up so close. Oh, I got it. Oh, there's a bunch of them there. Look at that. Several of them. That fish smashed it. What a bite that was. And see right there what I pulled up to this grass, and I looked up and I can see that dark patch of grass, and there's a big hole in that grass, and I threw over that hole. And that's where that school came up, and we just ignited that school with that Walking Boss 2 Junior right there, and he ate it too. That's what you want to see. Caught him up out of that hole again. Sound matters, man. They love the sound of that lip on that bait, and that shad sound helps call them up out of those places slow and easy. Well, all these ideal areas that I'm targeting here when I'm fishing and looking for grass that have fish in it is usually flats. And so most of these flats, points that come out, they typically have a hard bottom. And then the milfoil or hydrilla or mixed grass, eelgrass, sometimes thick clumps, sometimes small clumps with big open areas in it. And those open hole areas is where those fish you know, seem to kind of rest on that hard bottom, and they wait for those schools of shad to swim by. And I try to target and throw that bait into that area, those little feeding holes as I call them, and that's where the fish are going to be. Oh, look, they're busting all in here. That's good. Yeah, right on. Get ready. Oh, here we go. Come on, fish, go ahead. Grass on it. Oh, look, I'm chasing bait right now. Hole again. I stirred them up. Look. Get another one right there. Gosh, you're better off getting the grass off that bait so you can get back out there. Man, they're breaking right there. Gotta hurry. You gotta get on them really quick. Oh, come on. There's some good ones in there. There he is. Ah. Oh, there's a bunch of them right there. That's the smallest one in the pile. Got it. Look at that. Oh. Top water gets so fun in grass. If you ever find the right little hole. Find the right little hole in the grass, just like that. And you see them jumping around, breaking. Man, it don't get any better than that. Fish for several hours, just catching one here, one there, and then all of a sudden the activity turns on. You never know why that is, but as long as you're doing the right thing in the right areas where you see all the bait fish, a lot of these same areas were dead 4 hours ago, now they're coming alive. So if you've got the right bait, you target those holes in the grass, you can catch a lot of fish, you know, when the fish are chasing bait up in those grass beds. As soon as I get it out there really fast, as soon as it lands, I try to quickly get it onto the surface and make it kind of skip along and get it to right where they're breaking at. Then I slow back down and start winding it. Boy, that one smashed it. Oh, I love top water. That's what top water, that's why, not only why you throw top water, you throw it because it's so much fun to catch fish on it, but it's also the only way sometimes to catch fish in the middle of all that heavy grass, just like you see right there. Look at that grass on the hooks. I reeled that bait right over that hole and just smashed. They come up out of there. But you got to make sure, remember to target those holes. Take that Walking Boss Junior 2, smaller downsized type bait like we've used today, and cast long casts with braided line, and you will catch fish when you go grass fishing.
When I'm getting ready for a Bass Pro Tour event, one of the things that's really important is map study. You know, back in the olden days, all I used is paper maps, and they're still a good tool, but now I want to use the map on my unit because the detail is just incredible. You know, these lakes are mapped with 1 foot increments, and they're actually scanned, so the map you're looking at is going to be totally accurate. The other thing is I can adjust the water level. So, you know, if you have a big flood or something like that and the lake's up 10 feet, I can adjust the map so that it's accurate to the exact day and water level that I'm out there. On top of that, one of the features I really like is the depth highlight feature. So I will shade the first 5 feet in red. So it keeps me from running aground on a shoal or a long point that may come out. And again, if you got the map adjusted for the water level that you're currently fishing under, it's going to be perfectly accurate out there on the water.
You know, a jerkbait, it is a fish catcher, but at times, ripping this guy the wrong way could be right. It's today's In the Zone. There's one. Oh my gosh, he is full of fire. Gosh, that is a little chunk. If you watch the Bass Pros TV show, really for the past decade, you have seen hundreds of fish catches on a jerkbait. One of the naughty little secrets about jerkbaiting is, if you pan over right now to my buddy Kevin VanDam, you see when he's cracking that jerkbait real hard, whack, whack, whack. One little tip for your jerkbait fishing that'll help you is remember the upswing. When shads start to die off in a lake, they die like that angle right there. Try a jerkbait upswing. So you're jerking downwards and then whack, you swing up to the sky and it makes that jerkbait do that. Let's do it again, you ready? Makes that jerkbait do that right there. It just gives them a different look from a jerkbait that they've never seen. All you do is make that last snap just upwards. You just do it standard, snapping down, and then just bring it up like that. Generally, it makes that bait stand straight up and down, and there's one right there. There it is. If you watch that, if you watch me do that, that bait totally stood on end. I have seen so many days where that snap upwards has absolutely loaded the boat. Oh, it's a big smallmouth in here. Look at that. Look at that. Oh. It seems like such a minor tip. Try it this year where you're doing the standard, where you're jerking that jerkbait down and make your last snap where you come up. Hello everyone, and welcome to Bass Pro Shop's Outdoor World, where every week we start our little show called the Bass Pros for over 14 years, featuring the best anglers on the planet. On today's show, well, Chris Lane's going to show us how he junk fishes his way through a scorching hot day in Alabama. Then I'm going to show you just by adding a little bit of flash to your swim baits can produce a lot more strikes on today's In the Zone. But first, Kevin VanDam shows us one of his favorite ways to catch spring bass in the Mid-South.
Still a nice one, but he was bigger when I first set the hook on him. In clear water like this, man, you got to be a lot trickier when you're flipping that heavy cover like that. You got to change your baits a little bit. You got to change your presentation a little bit, and you got to be a little bit sneaky, but you can still get them in there. I mean, when you got the lake level up like this, these fish want to get up in that cover like that, and they're just spooky though, so I knew I'd get some bites if I just kind of downsized, used something a little more natural, and got a little more distance between me. So let's see what we can put together. You know, when you got conditions like this, it's just critical that the fish see your bait before they ever see your boat. So instead of just a normal, short pitch or anything like that, I'm really extending my distance. So this is where, that casting practice and being accurate is really going to help you. These fish, if they see the boat, they're not going to bite. You have to catch them by surprise. Jeez. A little bit better. I just picked up and it was heavy. It didn't look like much of a bush, but I was kind of right in between, so I pitched it in there, and sure enough, it's a nice one. Right there, just kind of skinny. A lot of these fish are post-spawn, but they're up here. There's bluegills, there's a lot of things up there, and what I'm using is a Strike King Ocho and a Fat Baby Finesse worm. I've got a honey candy color. This water's real clear. And the bluegills look just like this. It's got a little purple and a little green in it. And I've got it on a real light weight, 3/16 ounce sinker, tungsten weight. So a light wire 4/0 KVD grip pin hook, and just rigging it Texas style. Has a nice glide to it, but it's heavy enough that it'll fall down through those bushes, but light enough to where it still has that nice glide to it. And you can get a lot of strikes by pitching it a long ways and just letting it fall down into that bush. I'm just kind of going along covering water and caught that fish off an isolated bush. What I'm really trying to target though is I'm trying to look ahead and look for those thicker bushes or the ones that are just out a little bit deeper and maybe underwater, and just make a good long pitch and then let it fall down through there all by itself. But the best stretches sometimes where it's real thick are not best. You might come to one isolated good bush like that and there'll be a fish in it. Just definitely look for any of those dark shadowy spots in this clear water like this, because that's where they'll get right tight when the sun's high like this, right into the heart of the center of that bush. So I just want it to glide right down through that spot. God, he was right. How'd he come off? Boy, he was right in the center of that bush. It was a good one too. That's where you have to go though. I mean, you can look at this bush right here and see it's a big bush. It's real dark down in there. That was a really good fish, and he just got me wrapped up in there, and I couldn't get him all the way out. You're not gonna get them all, but you have to go right to the heart of the cover. I mean, he was in the center of the bush, like thick. Rubbed my line, but I got that one out at least. Another nice one. But you can look right here and see this bush. It's a bigger bush. There's a little bit of a point right here. And I just flipped right into the heart of the center of it. You gotta let that bait sink all the way to the bottom with, you know, dead slack in it. I mean, that's what gives it that really good glide, so. Good looking deep bushes. Another kind of isolated bush. I've been just trying to haul butt, trying to find some thicker bushes in these pockets, and they're using what they've got. Even though it's clear water, I'm using heavy equipment. You know, I've got a 7.6 heavy action pitching rod, high speed reel, you know, with an 8-to-1 gear ratio. I want to be able to pick up a lot of line. You know, 20-pound test, Fast Pro, XPS fluorocarbon. And I'm just, you know, I'm making long pitches. So you need a powerful rod like that just to be able to get the hook in them at that distance. Really fishing a lot farther than I really, you know, would if there was more color in the water. I just know that I can't get as close to them. They're a lot more skittish and a lot more spooky. But, you know, that buckbrush is tough. So I'm struggling with a few of them, even with 20-pound tests and a 7.6 flipping stick. I've been really fishing fast and covering a lot of water, and I've kind of got it figured out now that these fish are really targeting these outer, deeper bushes. And it's hard to look down through there and tell which ones they are because there's little stair-step ledges. You almost have to kind of get right up on top of it. But when I have a thicker bush that's out there in that 7 foot of water, kind of more towards the outside edge that's got a lot of shade in it, that's the ones that they're in. There's a good one. You can see, I mean, that's that one big bull bush right there. And I pitched it right up to the base of it. And, you know, that's a good fish right there. And I have fished and fished and fished down through here. And, you know, it just hadn't got any bites. And then just bam, 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 like in that 50 yards, there's 3 bites just back to back to back. And that's what it takes. I mean, you got to cover water. You got to have, you know, a really good presentation. And, you know, once you get into an area like this, you want to really slow down and fish it. It looks like we got another, you know, 75 or 100 yards of this really good stretch.
Summertime in Alabama. You had better learn how to catch them when it's hot. And we're going to get out with one of the best right now, Chris Lane. And, well, he's going to show us you might have to throw the kitchen sink at him.
So when you're grass fishing in late September, have a bunch of Bass Pro Shop rod and reels on your boat, because the thing is, they're going to be doing every different thing. They're going to be schooling, they're going to be breaking on top, they're going to be in the grass, they're going to be on top of the mat. Have all your rods set up, ready to go with all the different baits so that you're ready when the fish decide to feed. Just like that, and you can see, oh my gosh, there's a 6-pounder behind him. Holy cow, giant behind him. Just because you're catching them on top water and they're blowing up doesn't mean you can't use a lot of other baits to catch big fish in those scenarios. So, Whopper Plopper, #1, there we go. So as you can see this morning, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 8 Johnny Morris Bass Pro Shop rod and reels on the deck. And they're all rigged with something different, because when you're fishing grass flats and points where you catch them shallow, and then as you get deeper, they want a different bait and a different bait. So our kind of the thing today is to make sure that you don't get caught up just on one bait. Make sure you got plenty up there, so when the fish want something else, you got it ready. So we just caught one on Topwater, and they're not really blowing up, but as the grass transitions down, as we ease off of this point, the grass, it's really thick on top, and then it starts to thin out. The deeper you go, the thinner the grass gets. So as we're going down, you know, the Topwater was good, but those fish are, you know, on the outside are a little bit deeper, so they might not want to come up for Topwater. Therefore, we're going to pick up a vibrating jig and make a few casts in the deeper water with it. Let it sink down, and then just tick the top of that grass. That bait's not getting buried up in it because it got deeper, the grass got thinner, hopefully get a bite. When you're out there and you're throwing that vibrating jig, you want to have something that's got a lot more flex in it because that fish will eat it. You don't want to rip it out of his mouth. So the medium Johnny Moore's Platinum Series rods, what I use with this, 15-pound fluorocarbon. There he is right there. It's just one of those things. Oh, he ain't that big, but he's a good one. Where you switch up, and out here a little deeper, we'll power pull down. And what we did is we just switched up to a vibrating jig here. And you know, this bait, it goes deeper. So we were catching them on top. Now we switched up because we're just trying to follow in the transition. So nice 2.5 pounder. We'll let it go, get another one. If I'd have kept throwing Topwater, never caught that fish. Letting the bait sink down, getting down in the grass where those fish were wanting to feed, it was an opportunity that you don't want to miss out on. So then we transitioned down the lake, and when you go down the lake, you know, it's starting to get warmer, and I had already caught some fish out deeper. Grass doesn't grow out there in that 9, 10, 12, 14 foot here, you know. It's more in that 8 to 6 foot. So just from experience, instead of running over the fish, going all the way straight to the grass mat, we started before, focus on that, and then just work your way to the grass mat so you don't miss an opportunity that's presented to you. So as I'm looking at my Lowrance, I can see that there's a hump that comes out right here, and you can see the grass is topped out right up there. So on the top of the hump, it's topped out. That's where we'll throw a frog and some Topwater. And then as that grass comes down, or that hump, the grass starts to, like we were talking about earlier, it starts to thin out. So as the sun's getting up and maybe some of those fish are pushing off deep, we're just gonna change up here, a different bait again, and this being a drop shot. So on my drop shot rig, I love a 7.2 to a 7.3, medium heavy, long cast, great feel, a little bit longer rod so that you can pull into that hook set. Uh-oh, uh-oh. Yes, sir. Nice fish there. Couldn't resist it. So just like that, the drop shot catches a fish. So we've caught them on Topwater, we've caught them on a vibrating jig, and we've caught them on a drop shot. So that's the top of the water column, the middle of the water column, and the bottom of the water column. And in all sections of grass, really thick to scattered to just a little bit of sprinkler grass here and there. So we'll let this one go and catch another one.
Hey, if there's one thing to remember in the heat of summer, it doesn't matter if you're from Michigan, Alabama, Texas, you can't go shallow enough. Some of the biggest fish in the summertime live about that deep. If there's water over their back, pretty good chance you'll catch them.
Hey everyone, we're catching bass here on Lake Guntersville on as many baits as we can, just to show you that opportunity will present itself. Have the right gear to be ready. So here's the thing, we pull up to this next point, we don't see nothing. So then I get my drop shot, nothing. Vibrating jig, nothing. I'm like, man, I know there's gotta be some fish around here. And sure enough, fire the whopper plopper out there right before we're gonna leave. Poosh, like that. Just right over the grass. Good fish. Power pull down. Just couldn't get enough of it. Yes, sir. They're biting a whopper plopper. We were out there deep. I said, you know what? Let's just go in shallow, throw over some of the grass. Therefore, we had to change baits. We were throwing a vibrating jig and then a drop shot and catch one like that. So like we were talking about, you know, you got to fish what you see. If you see one blow up shallow, have your Topwater. Have all your Bass Pro Shops rod and reels ready to go. So be ready, have the right bait for the right application. So with your topwater baits, you know, you kind of gonna stay between that 7 foot to a 7.3, depending on the bait. The lane changer's a 7 foot, whopper plopper's a 7.4, Johnny Morris a medium heavy. You don't want something that's too heavy and you don't want something that's too light. A medium heavy is perfect. Throw it with a 6:8 to 1 gear ratio. Johnny Morris Platinum Series rod and reels, they're awesome. Did you hear that? Right there. See, that fish's not gonna hit a frog. We got everything ready just in case we hear one blow up like that. Couldn't resist it. The old lane changer on the front hook. That's when you know they're eating good because they're hitting it from the head first. Nice little chunker. We'll go back and get another one. So today was fantastic. It worked out just like I had planned. It doesn't always work out like that, but we caught them on top starting out. Then we caught them mid-level in the sparse grass. And then, hey, picked up a drop shot, caught some on the edges out deeper, and just had a fantastic day. Caught a lot of fish, but I knew that, hey, let's go do something that I like to do, and that's throw a frog on top of the mat because we haven't done that. I love to throw a frog whether I catch one on it or not. It's getting late. We really hadn't hit the top of many mats today. We've been catching a lot of fish on the outside, but we're gonna do what I love, throw some frogs over the top of this mat. And that's how you do it on the frog. I knew she wasn't lying to me. Get a beautiful mat like that. Been fishing out deep and then you come up, got some grass mats right there. There again, a different bait on the scum frog here. Nice 3-4 pounder. Wow, what a fish. So go to Bass Pro Shops, get everything you need to go before you go fishing, especially if you're going to Guntersville and in the grass, because the opportunities present itself from top to bottom.
Swim baits, they just catch bass, but adding a little flash could catch more. It's today's In the Zone. Oh gosh, what a bite. What a bite. Not a big hogger, but I mean a nice little chub. One of the most popular ways to catch big bass is basically a belly-weighted swim bait. This is a 4.75 Strike King Rage swimmer and a Trocar swim bait hook. You know what? We're actually not even gonna talk about it. We're gonna add a little flash to it. Same setup, a Strike King 475 Rage Swimmer with a Trocar swim blade hook. The great thing about it is you're showing them the same presentation. You're basically showing the same presentation as you would with just a Texas rig swim bait, you know, a weighted belly hook, but that a lot of times that little bit of flash, that little flash is what'll make them ignite. I got 20-pound fluorocarbon line and a high-speed reel, and that high-speed reel is critical to move him when he bites. Sometimes I'll give it a little flare just to kick that blade a little bit. What's amazing about this is how incredibly well this thing comes through grass. This is a popular way to catch giant bass. It just gives them a different look. And the other side is, when they bite this thing, it is like lightning strikes your arm. Literally, you can knock one out of the park when you set the hook. When they decide to fire on this with this little blade, I mean, they pile drive this. If you want to catch truly one of the biggest bass of your season, Strike King 475 Rage Swimmer, but try that Trocar swim blade hook. Trust me, you'll hit a home run. Stay pegged. Stay pegged. Yeah! Such a good bite. So if you are a Texas rig swim bait thrower this year, gosh, I mean, he got it. Hello and welcome to the Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World, coming to you with another episode of the Bass Pros, one of the best, most educational fishing shows on the planet. And on today's show, Jeff Creed, he is one of the best at catching fall bass, and he's gonna show us everything. Then, one of the most asked questions about a drop shot, how far do you want that leader? We'll tell you in the zone. But first, Timmy Horton, he's gonna show us how to catch a lot of bass in confined areas of the grass. There we go. Boom.
Still on there? Oh, yeah. Sweet. Hey, tell me that ain't the way you start right there, buddy. Hey, one thing you gotta do, get your mark. Gotta get your mark. Gorgeous. Oh, I love it. Man, I'm gonna tell you one thing I like to do. Look where you've ripped grass up. You can see all the way over here, it's floating. You know, we've drifted off of it some with the wind. There'll be a whole group of them down there, right on that spot. You're gonna control motor knees on back up there. But you can see the grass, see the milfoil that's ripped up floating. Go to the furthest edge of where you see it floating, and you know that's where you just came up at. And there'll be little tunnels and windows down there. There you go. And there will be more than one every time. Tell me that ain't cool. Look at this. What I mean, see, look, we ripped it up again right here. Exact same scenario. Had we just kept going with the wind, boom, you don't get another one. That is so cool. Man, these fish are thick. Oh, gosh. That's the cool thing. Everybody thinks that schools are just about fishing ledges and drops, and they get on the grass as well. Gorgeous. You know, we're up north, but this scenario happens everywhere in the country. Anywhere that has this vegetation, the same technique is going to work. You know, one of the things that I like to do, the milfoil is always going to grow out to a given depth. On this lake, it's about 9-10 feet, so I like to concentrate on those deepest areas where it's the thickest. Now, our goal is to find these schools, and you will find just mega schools setting together in groups down in this grass. And when you find them, it can be some of the best action you'll have all year. And really, To me, the biggest thing is these big flats where the grass comes out the furthest into the lake. You're gonna have a little bit more oxygen and a little bit cooler temps on the very outside edge where that water is moving around and getting stirred up daily by the wind. Come back at it that time. Oh, that's a big one. That's a big one. Man, goodness gracious. A strong fish. Look at that joker. The absolute tub. Man, big one right there, guys. Look at that fish. Are you kidding me? That's a tub. Oh, yes, I smoked it. Big Bass Pro Trocar flipping hook. Right there. I'm telling you. Whew, love it. Hey, that fish was strong. Man, he was strong. You know, the big thing is having the right gear too. You know, a good heavy flipping stick. This is a Pro Series, Duckett Pro Series. He's available at BassPro.com. And it's just a 7/6 heavy action rod with 50-pound Bass Pro Shops XPS braided line. And also on your cast or your flip, the technique that you make, when you put your lure in there, you really can't work it back towards you. So basically what you're left with is a direct vertical presentation. What we've got here is a 3/4 ounce Bass Pro Shops tungsten weight, a clone crossum in the green pumpkin color, and a Bass Pro Shops Trocar hook. If you don't attract that fish to the spot, reel in and move over about 10 feet. If there was a group under that canopy and you hit that 10-foot radius dome, they're gonna come to it, especially in this clear water. You got a lot going against you from a standpoint of when you set the hook, to be able to drive that in, you've got to move that fish, you've got to move through that grass. You got a lot going on there, so you really got to have the right gear, probably in this technique in as much as anything you do in bass fishing. Oh, that's a better one. Oh yeah. Oh yes. Oh yes, yes, yes. Get in this boat. Tell me that ain't thick. Man, I mean thick. Look at that. That is a tub right there. Show you guys this weight, you know, just trying to make the choice. 3/4 ounce tungsten weight, green pumpkin, just trying to match everything up. But when you're trying to make that selection of that weight size, I want to be able to get through the cover with as light as I can get away with. Oh yeah. Gosh, what a fish. Look at that. Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Look at this fish right here. Whew. Man, that's a tub. Oh, that gorgeous largemouth bass right there. Hey, I'm gonna tell you what, the ledges is not the only place they school up. You can find them in this grass as well. Use these techniques and you're gonna find success on your home waters.
Hey, whenever you think of the fall, you think about chasing a giant buck, right? Well, Jeff Creet's gonna show us there's also giant bass to be caught. And not only that, you might have the lake to yourself.
You know, everybody has their favorite structure to fish. A lot of people like rock, a lot of people like wood. My favorite by far is grass. Your hydrillas, your coontails, your milfoils. Anytime I fish a lake or body of water that has grass, that's what I want to target. We're here today in Oklahoma and we've had a couple really cool snaps and the water temperature is getting down to about 56 degrees. And my favorite thing to fish is grass. This lake happens to have a bunch of coontail. You know, the water is maybe 4 or 5 foot deep, but the grass is down, only grown up about a foot or two. And I don't care where you are in the country, if you have grass in a lake, that's where 90% of the bass are gonna be. When you're fishing this grass, there's several different techniques to do it. The first thing you take into consideration is the water color. And you can see this water's not super clear, but I mean, I can see a bait down about 2 foot, probably 3 foot. So your vibrating jig's always really good. I started off with the white just because I know that this lake primarily they feed on shads. I would 10 to 1 if I'm on a lake that has rocks or wood and there's also grass. I always feel like the guy that can figure out the pattern within the grass is going to win the tournament. And what this lake does, the grass will kind of grow up to the cattails and it'll keep growing on out. So a lot of the bites I get, matter of fact, I may be sitting on some of the fish. So I want the longest amount of time that my bait can be in that grass. I don't care if it's against the bank. I don't care if it's 100 yards off the bank. So I want to get as close to the cattails as I can, but I want to keep ticking that grass until I'm completely out of it. The bites can really come at any point I'm in that coontail. If you're going and you find out, okay, all of my bites are within 2 foot of the bank, well, that makes it easy. You can key on that, but until you really know, you've got to keep all of that grass honest. They might be out in a little bit deeper grass, you know. And see, this is what we're fishing right here. And this is coontail. There'll be a bunch of it, but then there'll be little mounds of it. And I'm trying to hit this stuff, and when I get in it, I'm just trying to rip it free. So I hooked this on purpose because I wanted to show you what we had. I slowed down and brought it in, but so when this stuff's growing up, you're wanting to hit it, get it hung, and then rip it out, and that's when your bites are gonna come. But you can see it's still pretty green, so it's pretty healthy. Because when you find that really green, real hard grass, that's the best stuff. What I found that works best for me, I'm throwing a 7/4 to 1 reel, and I want a fast reel just for the fact that a lot of those fish, when they hit it, they'll hit it and come straight at you. So I can take up line pretty fast. And I'm throwing right now, I'm just throwing 20-pound fluorocarbon line, and I'm throwing a 7/4 medium heavy, rod. I just barely ticked that grass. And he's not a very big one, but you can see when I pulled him out, you can see, I just pulled it off of that grass right there, clipped it out of that grass, and that's when he got it. So, and that's the thing about these fish in the grass. I mean, they're always real pretty and green and fat. Grass is by far my favorite thing to fish.
Hey, the one thing about the fall, it's one of those strange times of year that fish are in every single depth range, shallow, mid-range, out deep. When you're out on the water, keep all of your options open from 10 inches of water all the way out to 30.
I'm not catching them off the cattails, I'm catching them off that band of coontail out in front. It just happens to be that we're starting to kind of dial it in that the steeper banks are where all the big ones come. Hey, they just don't get any healthier than that. That's another big one, man. That's a fatty. Right now, we've been throwing a chartreuse and white because the water's a little off-colored. And, these fish are eating shad. They're not really on crawdads and stuff. Because I've seen some tails sticking out. And when one eats it like that, it makes me think I have the right color. About the time I'm thinking maybe I should switch, when they eat it like that, I feel like it's the right color. The bait that we've done all the damage on today is it's a 1/2 ounce vibrating jig, chartreuse and white. And the trick has been, for sure, is getting the bait down in that grass and getting a nice clean rip out of that grass. But the 1/2 ounce has definitely been the key. I feel like a 3/8 would be way too slow, and I think a 3/4 would have you in the grass too thick. So that's the bait of choice today. And you know, I want to feel that bait vibrating, and I'm trying to tick that grass. So like I hit grass there, I just give it a little twitch out and kind of, I'm letting it, twitching it out, let it fall, then get right back on it. And if I'm reeling and I'm not hitting any grass, I'm gonna slow down, let it sink down and hit that grass. It's just so important that you keep focused to keep hitting that grass. You know, as the water cools off, you know, you'll really have to slow your retrieve. And a lot of times when that water gets real cold, it's almost like throwing a jig. You're just gonna kind of pull and drop and pull and drop. So pay attention to your water temperature, but remember to be ticking that grass the whole time. Today we've talked about the vibrating jig, which everybody knows is great for this emergent grass that you can't see. You know, a couple of my other favorite baits to throw are, you know, a lipless crankbait. You know, they have the rattle, and I'm gonna do the same thing with it. I'm gonna reel it, get it hung in the grass, and kind of pop it loose. So that's a go-to. A swim worm, something like that right there is, gosh, it puts big numbers up. You know, this is something I'll always have on when I'm fishing this type of grass. And then you can go, as it cools off, when that grass is down there, I'll throw, you know, a jerkbait a lot over that grass. You know, the jerkbait tends to be better when the water's cleaner, but as it gets colder, this will get to be one of my favorites. So, you know, there's a lot of ways to catch them in this kind of grass, but typically you need to throw something you can cover water on, because it's almost kind of like a needle in a haystack. Right here, the water's gotten a little bit deeper, so I can tighten up a little bit, and it seems like the grass is growing, stops not very far off the cattail, so I can kind of tighten up and almost get a parallel. Stay really in tune with what you're doing. Don't go through the motions. And we all have that problem. But I mean, just stay real focused and keep paying attention to what's going on underneath the water. God, there's a good one. That's a big one. Look at that fat sucker, man. That's another good one right there. You know what we're kind of figuring out is the bigger fish we've caught have been where the grass is growing closer to the cattails. We're not getting bit on that flat stuff, and maybe because the water's cooled off, I guess these fish are going a little deeper, but every time I get parallel and I'm ticking that grass, that's where all the big bites have come from. That's another big one there. Good ones. There's a good one. That's a big one there, right there, guys. Golly. Ooh. Oh, that's a fun bite. Look at there. Got one. That's an old fatty right there. Look at that sucker. I mean, they are fat. That's what we've been looking for. That's what that vibrating jig catches, man. That's why all these guys have taken my money for years. I was just too slow to really buy into it, but there's probably not a more efficient way to fish this grass down there in that water than this bait, because I can control my depth so well. But I mean, that's a fat sucker. And there, the grass was going tighter to the cattail, so I was a little tighter, just keeping my bait in that grass as long as I could. But man, that is a pretty one right there, boy. I wish they were all built like that. I'd be a gabillionaire.
You know, I fish a full schedule of Bassmaster Elite events and fish from all over the country. And really one of the things I think gets overlooked is that we're not like the other sports where you see people in a 1 hour or 2 hour or 3 hour game and exerting a lot of energy over a short amount of time. We exert a lot of energy over a 10, 12, 14-hour day. And so you have to have your body prepared for that. And it's important to understand, you know, how to acclimate yourself to the extreme heats, to the extreme colds, to the sun, you know, to rough water, to self-inflicted wounds like I did in football, in high school football, how to maintain my shoulders and keep them strong enough for 1,000 or 2,000 casts you're making in a day. You know, I try to stay in shape. That's why I remember a Vince Lombardi quote that getting tired and out of energy makes cowards of us all. And it's certainly true in fishing. You know, once you get tired and it's cold, you want to be back home in front of the fireplace watching the football game. And so what's good for me may not be good for you, but you really need to think about, you know, developing a system that keeps your body prepared for what you're going to face out there on the lake.
Well, a drop shot, it is a fish catcher. But one of the most asked questions, how long do you want that leader? It's today's In the Zone. There he is. Nice one. Absolutely the most asked question I get about drop shotting is how far do I want my leader length from my worm down to my weight? And really, that's a two-pronged question. And number one is, if you're in shallow water, you don't want a long leader. You basically want a 2 to 6 inch leader like we have right here. I'm in 2 feet of water. I don't want a long leader. I want like a leader length of a few inches, right? I mean, that's only probably 3 inches. If I'm in deeper water, I'm gonna have a longer leader. The next part of this is, to me, the most critical. The colder the water, the shorter the leader. You don't want that worm waving all over, and you'll get that the longer the leader you make. You want about a 2 to a 5 inch leader to where that bait is very, very subtle and not getting a lot of action. The warmer it gets, go longer and have that thing waving at them. You're gonna get a lot more action and a lot more bites. Nice one, nice one, nice one. The lake that we're actually on right here, this is no joke, was frozen 30 days ago. Oh yeah. Oh no! Look what just happened. Look at that. Wow. And that is a great example of what I was talking about. This lake was froze literally 30 days ago. Just remember that this next year. The doors are about to open here at Bass Pro Shops Outdoor World in Springfield, Missouri, right behind me. The #1 outdoor store in the world. If you hunt or fish, this place is for you. On today's show, just after winning the Bassmaster Classic Hot Depot, he collided with a shad spawn and a pile of feeding bass, and he's going to show us exactly how to catch them. Then, when you're looking for big largemouth, well, look for the bluegill fisherman. What does that mean? That's today's In the Zone. But first, the Tokyo rig has been one of the hottest techniques the last year, and as always, Edwin Evers, he'll put a different twist on that technique.
What is really neat about this Zika rig, it's just a different version of a flipping bait, and it really excels in a lot of situations. You can catch them out deep with it, but you know, today I'm using it in grass because it goes through the grass so easy. That weight leads the bait down into the grass, and that sits there, and then my bait's off the bottom. And it works really, really well in these thick matted grass situations, but it's not limited to that. It's a new bait, came over from Japan. Some people call it a Jika rig. I call it the Zika rig. There's a lot of different variations of it, but just a neat little bait that is a different presentation that those fish hadn't seen. A lot of times when you're flipping heavy grass mats like this, you know, a lot of people use an ounce, ounce and a quarter, ounce and a half jig to penetrate it. That's the beauty of this Zika rig. You know, I'm using a 1/2 ounce weight right here. It's very bullet shaped and it goes right through those mats a lot easier with a lot less weight. So I'm pitching it out, I'm watching my line to make sure it goes through. You know, I'm sitting in about 8-9 feet of water right here, and I just let it go to the bottom. I let that weight sit there, and I'll jig it up and down a couple times. I'll bring it in and do it all over again. You know, when you get a mat a lot of times too, it's important that you make multiple flips around it. You know, you can catch 2, 3, 4 fish all out of the same little mat. You know, I've seen it happen a lot before. Oh, I think there's a fish there. Oh yeah, get in here. That's a good one. Look at that one, golly. Man, they're skinny today. That thing is all head. Light bite. That fish hit it on the fall, you know. My line jumped right when it was going down, and so much action with that swim bait. It's really natural going through there. A little one. Oh, pretty decent one. You know, the rig is really simple. It's just a weight right there hanging from a hook, you know, so the bait, it's what makes it fall so good. It's just very compact, streamlined when it goes down through, and then when it sits there, this is free to move, you know, from the weight, it's all free to move. And it also, in my opinion, a lot of times it looks like the bait fish is feeding on the bottom. You know, you sit there moving it, this bait floats up more horizontal. It's not restricted from the worm weight, and it, you know, it's just a different presentation. Looks natural, and you can see here it's working in the grass. So there's a lot of different baits that work on this, but one of them that's my favorite is more of like a swim bait, you know, because I get the added action of that tail when that thing's falling through, and it just looks really natural as that's sitting there on the bottom. But don't limit yourself just to that. There's multiple baits that you can use on this Zika rig. He's got it. Nice one. Oh, yeah. You know, one thing that's really important fishing like I am today with the Zika rig is I don't want to set the hook too hard. I'm flipping in these grass mats. I've got a 7.6 Johnny Moore's Platinum, you know, extra fast rod, high-speed reel, braid. You just don't want to set the hook overly hard. There's no sense in it. Oh man, you know, I don't have a lot of experience with that Zika rig, but I can tell you right now, it goes through that grass really well. It's a very versatile bait. Gives the fish something a little bit different to look at, and I like the action and how that bait sits. It almost looks like that bait's feeding on the bottom, so something you ought to give a try. Let's see if I can catch another one.
Well, one of the best times of year to catch bass is during a shad spawn. Defoe is going to show us some of his secrets to maximize that small window.
The shad spawn time of year can be some of the most exciting early morning activity that you can hit all season long. You hear about times when guys get out there early in the morning and catch a lot of fish. There is no better time, in my opinion, than during the shad spawn. There's one right in front of that little culvert. Just swimming that white jig, and he nabbed it right out in front of that little pipe. It's a prime place for those shad to be spawning. We've got some bushes here in the water. You can actually see them there flipping around the bank, that flooded brush and stuff, a little bit of flooded grass. It's a good start to the morning.
There we go. See you, buddy.
Oh, he's gonna jump. There he is. You nailed it. Shad spawn, you know, this deal really happens in the spring of the year. Right when bass are starting to finish up spawning, and then shortly thereafter they've been done. That's when the shad spawn really takes place on most reservoirs throughout the U.S. For me, I look for all different kind of stuff for shad to spawn on. But really this kind of combination right here, plus boat docks, are gonna be your main things. We've got green bushes, we've got a little bit of submerged grass, we've got some wood, we've also got some riprap. Shad will use all three of those independently or together along with boat docks to spawn around. The threadfin shad are the shad that I'm primarily targeting during this. Gizzard shad spawn, all other types of bait fish spawn as well. But those threadfin shad, that's mostly what I'm fishing around, mostly what I'm seeing. And the ones that are young of the year will be 1.5 to 2, maybe 2¼ inches. But a lot of these will be 3.5 to 4 inch long threadfin shad that you'll see in these groups. And man, when you find them, there's going to be schools of thousands of them. So looking for those big schools of that good medium size 3 to 4 inch threadfin shad, that's what you're after. I saw that one. Not much more than hit the water. I actually saw that fish when my bait landed right up under that dock, just barely sitting underneath the water. Boy, he had it good. And they're kind of skinny, but they're feeding back up. He turned right around and ate that jig. That's a good chunky fish. Oh man, that was cool. You know, a shad spawn deal, it happens really quick in the mornings. You can get out there first thing before daylight and those shad are going to be spawning, but you typically only have a couple hours or so, especially on a bright bluebird day like today. If you've got cloudy conditions, sometimes it'll last a little longer, but when you've got bright bluebird skies, it's really, really active, and then it goes away really quick. This particular bank and kind of what we've got going on right here, this is a spawning cove for bass as well as shad. It's got a lot of these little floating docks that these bass will use. There's some bushes and some trees along here as well. But the bass will have spawned in here, and then the shad will kind of move in and start spawning as well. So you've got a really good scenario for those bass to not have to go too far after they've finished up spawning and be able to feed back up after the spawn. For me, when I'm trying to decide which part of the lake I'm going to go to, you know, to really target a shad spawn, I think just like I do when I'm bass fishing and I'm trying to target the bass spawn, is that it's all about being around that right kind of water temperature. I've seen shad spawn when the water's as cold as being in the low 60s, anywhere in the 62, 64 degree range. But 70 is definitely kind of your optimum number. If you're looking for that, just try to target the part of the lake where you think that may be what the water temperature is and go from there. There he is. Look how dark that fish is. He has been under that dock in the shade for quite some time. Come here, buddy. Fish was up under that dock in the shade. He's been there a long time. You can tell by how dark he is. There's no grass much in this lake, so fish to be that dark, he had to be in the shade. Let's get him back in here. With the time of year that it is, and this particular lake that I'm on here, a lot of these bass have been done spawning for 2 or 3 weeks already. But because most of these bass have been done spawning for a while and I know they're already starting to move out, I'm focusing more on the deeper docks, the ones that are more out towards the points. Early in the shad spawn, it's going to be about those docks that are back in the pockets. You know, on a Sunday morning, knowing that that shad spawn's not going to last very long, especially in clear water, man, once that action starts to die and you start, you know, don't see any shad flipping, don't see them following your bait in, go ahead and drop it and move on to the next thing, because there is a way to catch them, and if this still ain't working, you might as well get off of it. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to pick back up with this shad spawn deal. I want to finish breaking it down and show you just a few more things that we didn't cover today, but for now, it's off to something else.
You know, shad spawn in low light conditions, like at night, in the evening. And the one thing to remember is more clouds, the longer that window will last in the morning. Next summer, trust me, the cloudier, the better for a shad spawn.
One thing I've learned over the years of fishing shad spawn all across the country, really, is just how much it seems to vary every single day. Because they will move around based on wind, based on sunlight. You know, a lot of different things can make those shad move. So every single day is going to be a little bit different. It's a new set of opportunities, a new set of challenges. and you really just have to be open-minded and not be locked in too much as to what worked, exactly where it worked yesterday when you're fishing the very next day. Oh, that's a big one. That was cool. I swam that jig right up in the top of that bush, and I actually saw him swim up there and eat it. I thought it was a great big one when he did. That was really, really cool. That little bush, man, that's in a perfect spot out here in the middle of a spawning cove where this fish is probably spawned a few weeks ago. You can see the bloody tail on it, but she's set up there now eating some shad. She thought that white swim jig was a shad, brought it right through her home. Saw her just come up and smoke it. Man, that was cool. One of the major indicators, something that I always look for during the shad spawn, are actually those shad flipping along on the shoreline like this. If you can see them up there on whatever it is, whatever kind of structure, but actually visibly seeing those shad, man, that's a great indicator that the bass should be somewhere close by, because once you find those shad, the fish are going to be close to the food source. The interesting thing about the way those shad spawn to me is that there may be a piece of cover there that you see them on, and then you don't. And then you'll see another group of shad use that same piece of cover. They actually seem to kind of move up and down a stretch or a bank or a boat dock, whatever it may be. They actually don't just sit perfectly still and just keep rolling around that one piece of cover. They'll use it, they'll move on to the next thing and move on to the next thing. Now, a really, really good piece of cover, there's almost going to be a constant movement of shad through there because it's the prime piece. So something like these vines, that particular brush pile right there, you know, a dock that's set up really well, they're going to have just constant balls of shad coming through there. And those are the places that are going to be really productive because the bass know that. They know that it's set up on the highway of where those shad are spawning, and there's going to be a constant flow of them coming through there. There's one. That was crazy. Really, really crazy right there. Was totally not expecting it. He liked that white jig. Man, that was so cool. Just an isolated piece of wood out there, and shad will spawn by that stuff on occasion. I thought, well, I'll just sling it out there and swim my jig by it, and I actually saw him swim up there and eat it. Man, what a beautiful fish. That's so cool. That's such a short cast. Fish surprised me, and then I surprised the camera guys as well. There we go, nice chunk. For me, my very favorite bait to fish during the shad spawn is a white jig. For me, that's a white Terminator Pros jig, 1/2 ounce is what I use, and a Bass Pro Swimming Elite chunk. That is just a really, really great profile. The nice thing about a jig is that I can fish it anywhere. I can swim it through grass, I can skip it under a dock, and I can swim it down a riprap bank just the same. So for me, a jig is just so very versatile during the shad spawn. But the setup that I fish it on is really important, especially for skipping it around docks, because I can make a really accurate cast and get that bait exactly where I want it. For that, it's a 7-1 medium heavy Johnny Morris Platinum rod, a Johnny Morris Platinum 8:3-to-1 gear ratio reel, and I want that extremely fast reel because sometimes those fish will grab that jig and move to you, move away from you or whatever, and you really have to take up slack fast. 20-pound XPS fluorocarbon line, very low stretch, very clear, very invisible line for the fish. So that's my setup. Having that rod and reel set up, perfect. Really makes it to where I can put that jig anywhere I want to and be able to pull the bass out of there. When I swim that jig, it's kind of a popping style retrieve. I want that jig doing this number, kind of a wave type action under the water. So I'll pop it, let it fall on a slack line, pop it, let it fall on the slack line. All that happens pretty quick. It's a steady, constant motion, bringing that bait back to the boat. There he is, right there off the edge of that dock. But look at that. Man, that's so cool. Come here, buddy. Man, fishing the shad spawn can be so fast and furious when it's right. It's one of my absolute favorite times of the year, favorite ways to fish. A white jig is a really hard one to beat, but man, just fishing that shad spawn in general, can lead to some great, great mornings during this time of year. Thank you, buddy.
At the Bassmaster Elite tournaments, we usually have 3 days of practice, and a lot of times when I tell people practice, they say, what do you mean? What do you do in practice? They just go catch fish? Well, yeah, of course you're trying to find fish, but really more important for me, those practice days are for me to go out and rehearse every possible thing that I might run into weather-wise, wind-wise, other fishermen being in the area you're fishing, and know how I'm going to deal with that ahead of time. I have a friend that's a Navy SEAL, and he told me one time the way to be very, very successful in their missions was that you had to rehearse every possible thing that could happen ahead of time and over and over and over. So if it happened, you shouldn't be surprised. You should already have how you're going to react and turn a potentially negative situation into a positive one.
You know, here on the Bass Pros TV show, we want you to catch more bass. One of those ways is to pretty much hang out with bluegill. Doesn't make much sense, but it's today's In the Zone. Probably one of the most asked questions I get if you get to a new lake, where do I start? And growing up, I used to read, every article and watch every TV show. Look for bait, look for bait, look for shad, look for shad. The one thing I'll tell you to look for besides shad, look for bluegill. Gosh, what a bite. My gosh, that was vengeance. One of the things that I always used to read about was the connection of shad to largemouth. Well, where I grew up, there wasn't a lot of shad. There was one word, and it was bluegill. There's a natural tendency as a bass fisherman to go to a lake and, hey, where are all the bass boats at? Don't do that! Because they're probably looking at you going, hey, where's the other bass boats at? When you go to a new lake or a lake you fish, look for where the bluegill fishermen are at. Look for aluminum boats. Like right when we came back into this bay, there was a bluegill fisherman right in the mouth of it. I'm like, uh-huh. So many areas that I fish, they are bluegill habitat. You know, whether it's a canal or it's a marina harbor where gills go in and spawn. And really what I do, and this sounds so simplistic, but I live by it, is I'm always hunting where the pan fishermen are. Besides the 3-day span, 4-day span, that big female largemouth concentrate on making babies, the other 348 days of the year, they are concentrating on making a bluegill's life misery. Unless I'm fishing for fish that are eating shad or eating perch or eating crawdads, I'm using something that's mimicking a gill. There he is. So this next season, when you get to your favorite lake or you get to a new lake, put on anything that resembles a bluegill and go to work. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Oh, that is such a bass fishing learning lesson. This year, when you go to your favorite lake or you go to a lake that you have never been to in your life. Hey folks, welcome to the Bass Pro TV show, coming to you here from Bass Pro Shop's Outdoor World, where you can supply all of your outdoor adventures, and I don't know, maybe see Mr. Alligator Gar back there, right? On today's show,
you just reel that swim jig over there and a fish bites it.
David Walker, he's gonna show us how to catch big ones in the grass. Then, have you ever looked at a Ned rig? I mean, it looks awful, yet catches so many fish. That's today's In the Zone. But first, Ish Monroe, well, he's gonna show us exactly how deadly a drop shot is during the spawn.
Look at that thing. Oh, that's a nice solid spot.
I mean, they're late spawners out there, and
You know, drop shot's one of the best ways to catch them. Look at that thing. Gosh, just an awesome fish. Right now we're in the late spring, and you know, people think that the spawn is pretty much over, but there's always late spawners, and you just gotta kind of have to know where to go look for them. But if you know how to actually fish for them on the beds, it makes it real fun and real easy. So we're gonna go ahead and catch another one. Usually when you're fishing these bedfish late in the season like this, they're deeper, and people go, man, it's hard to see those fish in 8 feet of water. And you know, a great pair of sunglasses is huge. You know, the sunglasses that I wear are the Cocoon sunglasses. They're 100% polarization. You'll be able to see through the water because of that polarization. And so we're just kind of looking for the circles. I mean, it's just same typical bed fishing, but they're just a lot deeper. Usually in the late season beds is you're pretty much gonna see a fish on every bed just because nobody's fished for them. And when nobody's fished for them, you know, they're still there. Oh, gosh darn it. Bit it off. Try a little pink one too. Maybe I can see it better for accuracy. Because sometimes with these deep beds, you can't really, you know, get it in there right. And like I said, accuracy is very, very important on bed fishing in general, but it's even more important on these late spawners. Got it. First cast. Accuracy is huge because the beds are usually deeper and sometimes they're slanted. And so what I did is I switched colors just so I could get a better look at it and make sure I was in the bed. Oh. And so I had to put on a pink one that I could see a little bit better in this cleaner water to go ahead and catch this fish. Got it. Oh, broke him off. Retie. Very important tip for you folks. Retie. And after that last fish, I should have retied, and that was a dummy move on my part. So, you want a tip, folks? Retie. There's another one. Making these accurate casts is sometimes hard because you actually got to cast past where you think the bed is to land in there. When you can see the steepness of the banks and how they slant, it's sometimes deceiving. I mean, they are a lot steeper than you think that they are. So pay attention to where your bait is actually landing in the bed, because there's a really small window of area that they're protecting. Got him, little. It was a fish, but not the right fish. Got him. The old drop shot rig on the bed again. I know. I like it so much because that weight drops it right there on the bed, especially when you're fishing these deep beds. Got him. Nice little fat one. Yeah, this one was on the Missile Baits Bomb Shot like every other one has. I've just been switching between two colors. It's just been one of our kind of pink colors that's been working real good, and obviously green pumpkin being the natural color, and just another good bass. When you're fishing for bedfish, you kind of gotta be stealthy. I tap my trolling motor, try to get a better angle or better position. You can't just be splashing around your bait in there. You kind of gotta get it just right. I had that fish that was up here earlier, just trying to get set up on him a little bit better, because when I first pulled up, he was sitting up here and he kind of spooked off real quick, so he definitely wasn't ready. There he is. Got him. Good one too. You definitely got to be patient. You know, I actually worked all the way around this area and came back to get this fish. Late season bed fishing, you got to have a little accuracy.
Drop shot drops it right down there and on her bed. I'm gonna let her go. But if you pay attention to a few little light details, it'll help you catch fish just like this one.
He's gonna show us how to catch a lot of bass in the grass.
Today, what we're gonna be doing is we'll be out here on a lake that it's a pretty good sized reservoir, but it's summer. I mean, it's hot. And usually in the summertime, you know, it can be really hard to catch some fish. But what's unique about this place is grass, and it's got a lot of it. If you find a lake with grass in it, that's one of those factors that allow you to catch fish throughout the summer. Get out of that grass. Uh-huh. There he comes. There we go. That's a good start to it. He's way over in that thick grass. When it comes to baits that you can use in grass, you're sort of limited because that grass gets around the bait, it gets hung on the bait. A swim jig like this one right here, got a very tapered head to it. You can see it's sort of a bullet design. It's called a snake eyes. It's a snake head swim jig. It's got a very soft weed guard to it, but yet it's got a stout hook in it, and it's designed to come through that cover great. There's a little guy right there. When you're fishing grass, the braid right here is the way to go, I promise you. It works the best. It cuts the grass. It gives you a lot of leverage to pull that fish out of that grass. Oh, man. Oh, gosh. Get out of that grass, fish. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Dude, a mouthful of grass right there. Mm-hmm. Oh, man. Now that fish was excited about that jig. All right, look where that jig is right there. That fish, I'm convinced. When I get to an area when I start seeing clumps of grass or openings in the grass, that's when a bait like this is just so effective because I can keep moving, I can cover a lot of water, and it's going to come through that grass. What's key is that bullet head shape, and as you can see, the line tie is straight out of the front of the bait, and that allows it to come through the grass very clean and very quickly. If you're trying to do this with other baits, you know, you're going to end up, as soon as it gets some grass on it, reeling it back in, pulling the grass off, and then making another cast. This one right here is efficient and it's effective. Right. So I'm just going to make a long cast with it. And as soon as it hits the water, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start retrieving that bait. And I'm just winding. As you can see, I'm using a high-speed reel, and I'm keeping that bait coming to me. But now when I hit some grass, I feel some on there. What I'll do is I'll just pop that loose just by dropping the rod tip a little bit and then just popping that kind of quick. And what that does is, as you can see, there's no grass on there. The grass that was on there, when you pop it like that, it'll break that grass free from the jig. What do we got here? Oh my gosh. Dang it. That one was unusual. It got bigger as it got closer. They usually do the other way around. They get smaller when they get closer. Now the trailer that I'm using on this today this is made by Z-Man. It's called a turbo crawl. And what's cool about it is these two tails back here. Those give it that action. So the jig is just coming through the water, but those tails right there is really what's giving it that wiggle, that attraction that's gonna cause that fish to strike. So it's really sort of a system there because it comes through the grass, has a lot of action, and I can cover a lot of water with it. So that's what makes the swim jig just so effective. Get out. Get out. Oh yeah. Nice. Come here, you. There's another one with it. Awesome. I tell you, that swim jig to me is just, It's fun because you get to see so much that's going on. Swim jig, got you a bass right there. That's awesome. Now the line I'm using right here, this is 50-pound braid. Now what's great about braid is it's got zero stretch. And what that does for you, two things. One is it will cut the grass. So when that fish dives down into that grass, you pull on it hard and it basically just cuts itself free from that grass. That zero stretch does a great job too on getting that hook into the fish on a long cast. So the braid is really key on this. What also is important here is I'm using a 7.5 foot, so I'm using a long rod that is a medium heavy rod. Typically I'll use even a heavier action than this one, but since I'm using braid, that'll really make up for if the rod's got if it doesn't have a lot of backbone, that braid, it compensates for that. The reel is also important. This right here is an 8.5-to-1 high-speed reel. This is a Shimano Corrado K. I love this reel because it does two things really well. One is it holds a lot of line, so when I'm using this bigger line like this, I'm not throwing it to the knot. It has a big spool capacity. Also that high speed, can't stress it enough. It works so well, especially with this bait right here, you're making a long cast and as soon as it hits the water, engage the reel and start cranking it. Really, it's all of a system here together. We got the jig trailer, the jig, the line, the rod and the reel. That whole combination does a great job in catching fish around a lot of grass.
Hey, if there's one thing to remember in the heat of summer, it doesn't matter if you're from Michigan, Alabama, Texas, you can't go shallow enough. Some of the biggest fish in the summertime live about that deep. If there's water over their back, pretty good chance you'll catch them.
So as you can see here, we got a really flat point, and because that grass is going to grow out there to 8-10 foot of depth, you can kind of tell where the depth lines are. So some of the banks you see there's hardly any grass. This one here is a big flat bank. And so this is a perfect situation for my swim jig because there's a lot of grass and it just tapers out very slowly. So it gives you that water column that you can fish that jig across the tops of that grass and right in it. Here on the edge where it's sort of broken, that's the stuff I'm looking for. Like we said before, I like to find those areas where there's a difference in the grass, whether it's the grass is broke up, whether there's holes in the grass, and then you just reel that swim jig over there and a fish bites it. I just love it when a plan comes together like that. I tell you, that swim jig does such a good job of catching fish in grass situations. Just if you got grass in your lake, or you know a lake that's got some grass in it, take a swim jig there. There we go. You could see, you know what's cool about that fish right there is I could see him react to that lure. Like I was reeling that jig right across the top of the grass, and I seen the fish sort of wake behind it. You see that fish pushing the water behind it, coming after that jig. All I did then was just sort of change the action a little bit, speed it up some, and that fish went ahead and grabbed it. Constantly. Golly. There's a fish. I mean, he's way back in that grass. There you go. There you go. There we go, right there. Well, you can see that's a good fish right there. And that braid is really what was key. You know, that fish was buried up over in that grass and he's doing everything he can to get away from that jig. But that braid allows you to get a fish like that out of that heavy grass, because without it, best case scenario, you go over there and maybe dig him out, but you're not going to be able to pull him out of there. But braid allows you to do that. That's awesome. So what I'm looking for right in here is really some differences to the grass, because you can kind of see that area there. It's all topped out. The grass is up to the surface. And then behind it here, we got some broken areas to it. So differences are almost always a key spot, no matter what type of cover you're fishing. So with this swim jig right now, I'm moving around, I'm looking for those different looking areas of that grass, and that's what I'm looking for visually, but I'm all the time casting and retrieving. I don't wait to throw at those places because you're liable to catch a fish through any of this grass, but generally those areas where there's some openings in it are always going to be key. Yep. Now you can see, looking at this right here, there's a clump of grass, another clump, and another one, and another one. This is a big flat, goes all the way to that topped out grass over there, but it's kind of broken up, and this is a perfect situation. Just like we were talking about before, look for those areas where the grass has got some differences, and this is key right here. It looks so good. I'm just really fan casting. I'm covering all that water out through there because it's really almost all the same depth through there. That's really not what they're keying on. What they're keying on is all that grass that's in there. If this flat had no grass on it, it would not be holding the amount of fish that it'll hold. That grass right there is what keeps the fish in this area. I think I can catch one right there. He's running so fast I can't tell how big he is. He was just coming at me the whole time. You see how fast that fish. Oh, gosh. Now that, right there in the corner of the mouth, as you can see, that old swim jig today and that grass and this hot weather is really paying off. And you can see, look at the color of that fish. What a great color on him. There's the grass, there's the jig, and then there's the bass. So anytime you're fishing in the summertime, looking for a good way to beat the dog days, find some grass beds on a lake, wherever it might be, and try that swim jig because it will pay off.
The Ned rig. I mean, seriously, would you look at this thing? I mean, look how pathetic that is. But it is a fish catcher, and if you're not throwing it, you could be missing out. It's today's In the Zone. If there's one bait that you just want to catch fish, whether it's bass or rock bass or just plain getting bites, it's that dude right there, the Ned rig. One of the most popular ways of fishing right now in the entire country is throwing a little Ned rig. And I remember the first time I saw it, I literally thought of a soft plastic stick worm from like 20 years ago. I'm like, really? That little dude? And I did, I'm not gonna lie. I shunned the Ned rig for a while because I'm like, oh, it's too close to a crappie lure. But that thing right there is probably one of the most popular techniques when things are going wrong. One of the great things about a Ned rig is it is so painfully easy to catch them on it. You basically let it get to the bottom and you're just popping it along the bottom, and the majority of the time that I'm throwing a Ned rig, the majority of the time that I'm throwing one is I'm using an 1/8 ounce or a 3/16 ounce stand-up head. It's a little flat head. And for all you Ned riggers out there, little guy, for all you Ned riggers out there, the beauty of that bait is it stands up perfectly on the bottom. I use 15-pound Seagar braided line. And the key to that is, that's a really, really light bait. You want to get that bait away from you so you can work it back to the boat. This year, tie on a Ned rig, don't overfish it, you will absolutely load the boat. Hey, seriously, this year, and the great thing about it is, when I say year, it catches them all season. If you want to catch a pile of fish and some doggone good ones, throw the Ned rig.